Good morning, everybody. Yes, we are the Newsroom team. We'll be with you until midday today, bringing you all the best from all around the world of news. Morning, Elvis.
Good morning, gentlemen. Are you well?
Good morning to the both of you.
Yes.
Top of the morning to you. Yes, today, well, we've got a focus here in South Africa that's quite disturbing, some would say. 90 councillors have been killed, assassinated in South Africa since 2014. So, some in front of their families, and many are still fearing for their lives, Elvis. Elvis?
Yeah. That's why we're conducting a poll today, even I'm being distracted. Something happened here. So we're asking a question today. Are political killings reaching crisis point in South Africa? Because it is a problem. 90 councillors dead thus far. So far, 121 votes in, Kendall.
Yeah, absolutely. This is absolutely disturbing that so many councillors have been killed, but the response from our viewers is heartening. They think it's a crisis as well.
It is a crisis, and I think it's being dealt with both at a political and a policing level. But let's have a look at some of the tweets here.
So far, there's more violence than justice in RSA. I feel that the police should be more firm, and they should do more to protect the citizens. So says Jamila van der Schuyf.
Amile Lubanzi says political killings in KZN only because we stuck with useless police service and dysfunctional justice system.
Well, the killings have moved down the coast. They're now in the Eastern Cape, of course. We've seen quite a few there. But we take it a little bit further because it's so easy to get an assassin, it seems, in South Africa today. Obviously, for a couple of R100, it seems you can get somebody to kill someone on your behalf.
Especially in KZN, they say, and we'll focus on that also a little bit later, and that's why we're asking you this question. Cleveland's Hostel in Umlazi has been pointed out as being connected to the killings of the political violence in KZN, and are said to be the nest of hitmen and activities, and that's why we're asking that question, Kendall.
Yeah, I would like to find out from you, what do you think? Should hostels linked to political violence be closed down permanently?
Yeah, should they be flattened and we build houses for families to move into? Lungelo tells us, he says, if the answer is yes, then they must be build RDP houses for people staying in the hostel. That's it. It should be rebuilt. The legacy of apartheid and the legacy of killing should stop.
Yeah, now Jamila comes in with, this is a tough choice. These hostels cannot be closed down because there are people living there. Where will they go after it's closed down? That's the question.
Well, Jamila, we have to make the appropriate arrangements, of course. Humanity and human rights always top of the mind. We are in South Africa, after all. Anyhow, we're also asking a sports question, a surprising development in the last 24 hours. Orlando Pirates have once again parted ways with the coach.
With the coach.
You know, some people are asking what the knell is happening at Orlando Pirates.
You know what? That's because Shell Yonaviet has left. Yes, that new coach that Orlando Pirates announced just 6 months ago, he's gone now. 5 months ago. He's gone now.
5 months.
We want to know from you, are you surprised at the sudden resignation of Orlando Pirates coach Shell Yonaviet?
I, for one, was a little bit surprised. But anyhow, Mr. Lungelo Madoda Mbele says to us, no, I'm not surprised because under Kjell, Pirates lost by bigger margins, and that was embarrassing for a so-called bigger team. But you cannot continually change the coach. Structural change needs to happen.
Yeah.
He didn't have that thing, says Nhlanhla. That thing to coach a team like Pirates.
Oh, what is that thing? Please specify what is that thing. We'd love to know what that thing is. Anyhow, let's get into our work this morning. Time for the headlines.
Schools have reportedly been closed in Klipspruit West as residents take to the streets. President Jacob Zuma expresses shock at the death of ANC Member of Parliament and Member of Parliament's Basic Education Portfolio Committee, Timothy Khoza. And the man at the center of the Coffin case, Victor Mlacha, is expected to continue with his testimony in court in Middelburg this morning. Now, those are some of your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
You know, we've had so much bad news over the last couple of days in terms of our sporting world. It's great when Charlotte Clow does it again and brings it back home.
Yeah, absolutely. The guy's a superstar. We love him. Didn't have the greatest champs, did he? But it is what it is. He's got that quality.
Now, he's a golden boy for sure. And that's exactly what I'm going to be leading with in our sports this morning. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you today.
Electoral just beginning to click up through the gears right now. Poetry in motion.
South Africa's golden boy in the pool, Electoral, does it again as he wins gold in both the 200-meter freestyle and the 100-meter butterfly events at the FINA Swimming World Cup in Russia.
Now McGowan, here it is. He's going to get another first-place finish ahead of Barrett of Great Britain.
But we have tried forgot what's been behind us, and we're looking forward. And it starts today.
Orlando Pirates Football Club head coach Shell Yonovriet has tendered his resignation after less than 6 months at the club.
It's always massive to get the recognition from a great athlete like Usain Bolt, but it also takes a lot of responsibility now for me to go out there and work for that recognition that I got.
And ahead of the IAAF World Championships in London, sprint sensation Wade van Niekerk responds positively to praise heaped on him by Usain Bolt. All this and more we've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin. Do stick around for it, and also do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Schools have reportedly been closed in Klipspruit West as residents take to the streets. Traffic authorities have advised motorists to avoid the R53 in Klipspruit outside Soweto and Eldorado Park due to the protest action. Outraged residents blockaded the road with burning tyres and rocks and set a Putco bus alight in the early hours of this morning. The residents say that government has continuously marginalised the coloured community and has made the Klipspruit West saga a racial issue to deviate attention from the important national issues. This after the predominantly coloured community objected to the appointment of a black principal at the Klipspruit West Secondary School last week. Now, for more on this story, we are now joined on the line by our reporter Mangoba Mkhunu, who is in Klipspruit West. A very good morning to you, Mangoba. Tell us, what is the situation like there? Are people still demonstrating?
Well, certainly people are still demonstrating here, Elvis, outside the Klipspruit West Secondary School. As you'll recall that earlier on we did see some violent scenes taking place here at Klipspruit as residents took to the streets and blockaded the streets with rocks as well as burning tires. They also allegedly hijacked a Putco bus and set it alight. Well, that Putco bus, as we speak now, is still here on the main road to Eldorado Park, and it's been at this stage it's still there, just waiting to be cleared by emergency personnel. But I can tell you at this stage is that the community members are still out here outside the school. They've gathered here where they are holding some sort of a meeting to discuss the way forward with their planned protest. But certainly they are also blocking the entrance to the school, preventing the learners from Klipspruit West from going and attending classes there. And what I can tell you is that there is no schooling currently taking place here, and most of the learners indeed are here on the streets as well, just waiting outside, most of them just still dressed in their school uniforms, and they're telling us that they've been prevented from going into the school today by the protesting group, and they're saying that certainly looks like today they're going to miss out on school. But we spoke to one of the learners who told us that indeed they felt that this was indeed not good for their education, as they're saying that they will be missing out on school, and that being this time of the year, we know that this is the third quarter of the year, and certainly it will come as a major disruption to their education as they are going to be writing exams soon, especially matriculants who say that they're going to be beginning their trial examinations very soon. And so they feel that this protest really is going to affect their schooling as well as their preparations for this exam. But certainly that sentiment being very different from what the parents are saying, who are saying that they still maintain that they are not going to accept the appointment of the new principal, saying that indeed that process to appoint the principal was flawed, and therefore they're going to continue with the protest, and the plan goes slow, as you have heard on the previous days before, saying that they want a new principal to be appointed and they want that process to be started up again by officials.
Mangoba, you'll keep us updated on the situation there. And, of course, you can also see there some of the pictures coming through from our reporter Mangoba Mkhunu, who's on the line from us to us from Klipspruit West. We'll keep you updated as that story evolves. Meanwhile, condolences and messages of support continue to pour in for 4 MPs involved in a car crash outside Paarl in the Western Cape. ANC MP Timothy Khoza died at the scene. The 3 others were injured and they're being treated at a Paarl hospital. They were part of the Basic Education Portfolio Committee conducting oversight visits to schools in the area.
This is what is left of the vehicle the MPs were travelling in. The driver was trying to make a U-turn after getting lost. A taxi rammed into it, knocking it off balance. It landed on the other side of the road. An MP travelling in another vehicle witnessed the crash.
What he saw was that the vehicle in which the colleague who deceased was in did a U-turn on the freeway, seemingly not knowing where he was going.
Timothy Khoza from Mpumalanga died on the scene. The ANC's Deputy Chief Whip also hails from the same province. They lived in the same parliamentary village.
Personally, the loss is just too much because he was like a brother to me and to the family. We extend our heartfelt condolences to them.
ANC MP and Committee Chair Nomalungelo Gina, UDM Representative Cynthia Macheke and DAMP Ian Ollis are being treated for their injuries.
May we as the Democratic Alliance at this stage send our prayers and condolences and thoughts to all of those involved in the accident, and may we wish blessings on the first responders who are attending to those MPs.
At this point in time, they were told that they were being taken for x-rays and for proper assessment to establish the extent of those injuries. We are waiting for that report to come back.
All 4 occupants of the taxi were treated at a local hospital. One sustained serious injuries. Some MPs are now calling for better planning and safety measures during site visits. Bulilani Philip, SABC News, in Paarl, in the Poland.
The Coffin assault case continues in the High Court sitting in Middelburg and Mpumalanga today. Proceedings had to be adjourned yesterday when emotions ran high during testimony by the victim of the assault.
Victim Lochwa finally telling his side of the story. He broke down during his testimony, describing how he was punched and kicked several times before he was forced into the coffin. He said he feared for his life as the accused threatened to pour petrol onto the coffin and set it alight. Mlochwa said he begged for his life. His mother couldn't hold back her tears. Emotions ran high in court.
Not all whites are racist, but the manner in which they are not remorseful. Just imagine when Victor was saying that they forced him inside the coffin and they are just like smiling and look like laughing. And that is so touching to us.
It's actually sad to see what has happened, and for the accused number 1 and 2 for not even feel any remorse or regret towards what he is satisfying. It's upsetting to the public.
The farm workers Willem Oosthuizen and Martins Jackson have pleaded not guilty to the charges of kidnapping, assault and attempted murder. Security will be beefed up in the next coming days of the trial in fear of possible violence that might erupt during court proceedings. Mweli Maslela, SABC News, in Middelburg, Mpumalanga.
Now, the so-called Coffin assault case was postponed yesterday to today by the High Court sitting in Middelburg and in Mpumalanga. The plaintiff, Victor Mlochwa, yesterday testified how he was allegedly assaulted and forced into that coffin by the 2 men who threatened to set him alight. He says the pain he felt while allegedly being assaulted by Willem Oosthuizen and Martins Jackson was unbearable. For more on this, our reporter has been following the story. It's Mweli Masilela. Mweli, a very good morning to you. What can we expect today?
A very good morning to you and the viewers. Yes, we are coming to you from the Middelburg court. This is where the High Court looking into this case is sitting. Just to take you back as to what happened yesterday. Yesterday, the victim, Victor Mlochwa, testified in court for the first time. He quite relived the ordeal of that day of the 17th of August. He was quite emotional in terms of what he was telling the court yesterday, saying that he remembers very well that on the 17th of August he was sent by his mother to go get some groceries in town here in Middelburg. But then when he was waiting for a lift to take him to town, that is when the 2 gentlemen approached him and then they started punching him and also kicking him. And whenever he was trying to ask as to what exactly was he being beaten, there was no answer according to him. He went on further to say that after he was beaten and kicked, it was then that he was then forced into the coffin. As I said, he was very emotional, saying that once he was put inside the coffin, he tried to refuse, but the two accused threatened that if he tries to run away, he will be shot. He said he even saw the gun on the wrist of one of the accused, and also he said he saw the container of petrol which was said to which was carrying the petrol that was he was told that petrol will be poured on the coffin and he will be set alight. So those are some of the things that came up in court, and we could see from the gallery that those supporting Victor Mlotshwa were not happy about the reaction from the two accused, saying that they can't be smiling or laughing or whatever whilst Victor is testifying, whilst he was still emotional. So the emotions ended up running very high in such that there was some kind of sort of a confrontation inside court. That is why today we're expecting to have more police officers to monitor the situation or to ensure the safety of everyone who will be in court today, considering what happened yesterday, because we're told yesterday that we are expecting about 20 police officers to be inside court.
Thank you, Mweli. That was our SABC News reporter, Mweli Masilela, giving us an update on what to expect today at the Middelburg Court there in Mpumalanga. So now today we focus on the serious issue, of course, looking at the killings in KwaZulu-Natal. And, you know, we are talking about political killings and violence, and that's why we're asking you this question on the poll. Are political killings reaching crisis proportions in South Africa? So far, 155 votes in. 90% of you are saying, yes, it is reaching a crisis point. Only 10% saying no. Let's start that conversation with you.
Yeah, you guys are tweeting us on this question. Of course, it's something that's disconcerting to say the least. Katlejo tweets us, he says, yes, and they're perpetrated by greed, intolerance, jealousy, and corruption. Everything involving money and politics ends up with this. This one from Jazz Kwepe says to us, big yes, killers are very close with politicians. Siafana says to us, yes, a special year at Gleblands Hostel. Yep, and that's also our question today. Our question deals directly with that. Should we kill these hostels that are known as hotbeds for hitmen and that are linked to political killings and the turmoil that goes with it? That's the question today. Tweet us on that and on our poll, of course. Let's take a couple of tweets while we're busy with it. Let's have a look what you guys are saying. This one says, Novelo, yes, they must be demolished, these hostels that are linked to so much violence and even political killings. Sitzaba, we missed Sitzaba. Ngutalo says to us, absolutely yes, and what comfort the killers is that they are not arrested and the investigation disappears without answers. Keep tweeting us, guys. Keep telling us what you think. But let's just set the scene quickly now. Families of the victims of political killings, they are now calling on the ANC's leadership to act and to put an end to the ongoing killing of councillors in a fight they say is for position. Now, a number of political killings have been reported in KwaZulu-Natal since around 2014, as well as a spike during the 2016 local government elections. Recently, the Eastern Cape is following suit. The Speaker, Raymond Mhlaba, was shot and killed there.
There is a major concern over political bloodshed as a result of political intolerance within the political arena. A number of councillors have been killed in KZN and no arrests have been made. Recently in the Eastern Cape, the Speaker of the Raymond Mhlaba municipality, Thozama Njobe, was gunned down a few blocks away from her house. 3 suspects have since been arrested. This is little consolation for the bereaved family.
And it's that time that is very sensitive right now that children are struggling to sleep. We are also struggling to sleep. I think it's just that time that we have been left alone to actually deal with the real issues around this particular situation. So we are actually struggling at this point in time to really cope.
The ANC in the Eastern Cape has condemned these acts, saying this is the second councillor to die like this.
We had a similar situation in Nelson Mandela. We lost a councillor there, and then a fortunate police made a breakthrough. People were prosecuted successfully. And again, we have seen that even on the recent one, someone has been actually picked up by the police, and that person has actually appeared before the court yesterday. We are quite pleased to see that, because these are things that we must actually nip them in the bud. We must actually uproot them.
Political analysts say now is the time for the ANC to bring in leaders to restore the movement to its former glory.
It requires a person who is driven by service to the people, not by a personal, to amass wealth or to hold a position. So for me, you don't deserve a position if you get to that position by eliminating, political eliminations and assassinations. They are an antithesis of leadership.
The ANC in the Eastern Cape has called on its members to be calm and disciplined as it heads to the Provincial Elective Congress. Provincial Secretary Oscar Mabuyane says the province needs to come out of the Congress united, regardless of who emerges winner. Busisi Wejemsana, SABC News, King Williamstown.
Just a correction there, of course, it was the Speaker of the Raymond Club, a municipality that was gunned down in the Eastern Cape. Thank you for that. Thank you for that note. Now, to carry on, the number is that more than 90 councillors have been killed here in South Africa in the last 3 years, some in front of their families. Now, that's according to the South African Local Government Association. The killings have discouraged professionals and skilled people from standing to become councillors as they fear for their lives. Now, in recent incidents, Gauteng councillor Mbuyiselo Dokolwane was shot dead and killed in Freedom Park here in Johannesburg after returning from a branch meeting. In the Eastern Cape, armed men burst into the Democratic Alliance's constituency office in Nelson Mandela Bay and fired a gunshot at dear activists and councillors before stealing cell phones and bank cards there. Last month, 3 ANC councillors in Umzimkulu in KwaZulu-Natal were shot at several times, one of whom was former ANC League Secretary General Sindiso Magaka. Now, in studio in Bloemfontein to talk about SALGA's stand against the killing of elected local government representatives, we are joined by the South African Local Government Association's Deputy Chairperson, Sebenzile Ngangelizwe. Very good morning to you, sir, and thank you for being with us today.
Greetings to all viewers in South Africa. As you have indicated, yes, I'm Sebenzile Ngangelizwe, the Deputy President of SALGA in South Africa.
Good morning to you, sir. The killings have been going on for years here in South Africa. Why are you only stepping into the breach now?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. First and foremost, as SALGA, we are representing the aspiration of local government and indirect and direct interest of municipalities in South Africa. Yes, of course, on the 19th of July, we met as NEC of SALGA. The political overview of Councillor Parkstow, the president of SALGA, revealed challenges that are facing local government in South Africa. Amongst other challenges that were revealed by our president, the killings of councillors dominated the discussions of the NEC. The National Executive Committee of SALGA resolved that we must protect councillors, and then we do that in partnership with COCTA and South African Police Services in the country.
Sir.
And then as SALGA, once again, you ask a very important question, why now? It's not a matter of we are coming now. We have started the process last year in terms of engaging with this matter. But we are therefore, as SALGA, inviting political parties to join us to promote democracy by respecting principles of democracy and build a democratic and prosperous society in South Africa. We are also inviting our own councillors, our fellow councillors, to observe some principles in terms of stopping, either sort of removing these killings in our space.
My Lord,
remember that.
My Lord, I know you've come prepared and you've got a prepared statement, and I respect the work that you do, but we have to talk about this thing.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, in your engagements and in the work that you've done so far, you say you've been working on it now for a year. What do you find? What is the motive behind the political killings? Is it as simple as greed?
Remember, South Africa, we are almost not more than 30 years practicing democracy. So as SALGA, we felt that it's of importance that we have to sort of teach our political parties in terms of how to respect democracy. Now, of late, people, they want to join a government, but they don't have a clear methodology in terms of how to join government. But some of the people who are interested to join our space, that is why we have decided to educate communities in terms of how to promote democracy. Therefore, we can have leaders moving forward.
There's a danger.
So as SALGA, we have designed that program. We are going to do it, as I've indicated to you earlier on, that we intended to partner with COCTA and the South African Police Service and Services. So for us to make sure that we promote democracy in our space.
It's one thing to promote democracy, sir. It's another thing to stop the killings. And the danger is that our political space become overrun by gangsters and murderers. We've had more than 90 killings. Surely we should be doing more than just talking at the moment. As
SALGA, in our discussions, we are concerned, really, for the killings that are taking place in our country. You have already mentioned that in the KZN, we have lost many councillors there. Recently, the Eastern Cape, the Western Cape, and the Northern Cape as well. But what we want to do as SALGA, we want to make sure that at least we play our role in terms of partnering with political parties to stop these killings. We are really concerned about these killings. And above all, we are going to lose professional people to join local government. Because local government, we are actually sort of providing services at that level. That is where service delivery is taking place. So if we cannot get professional people to join us at that level, it means we cannot deliver services into our own people.
How are you going to get professional people to come into politics now? Because there's very little chance of the kind of professionals we need to deliver services and to come up with the right strategies within the leadership space. People are simply too afraid to move into this. It's a little bit too late, I would think. We need a little bit more drastic action. Are you going to engage police services, the ministries, these kinds of people?
It's a pity that this week there's a cabinet, Likhutla. We're supposed to meet with the two departments, which is COCTA, South African Police Services, in terms of consolidating a strategy to protect our councillors in the country. But most probably next week, we have actually scheduled a meeting in terms of designing a roadmap to protect councillors in the country. That's our plan as SALGA.
What about the hostels where you can hire hitmen for very little money, places like Gleblands and so forth? Are part of the plans you're putting forward to target these hostels as well?
I should think South Africa, as a country, we've got a task, all of us, to learn how to promote democracy and make people to understand how it works. But you talk about the hostels. As a country, you would remember that we are from the apartheid government. There was a segregation in our own country. And then as the current government, which is actually in place of the African National Congress, they have started to develop a plan in terms of integrating our communities. Hostels is part of their program to integrate our communities. If you can check in the whole country, all hostels are actually, we have started to integrate people where we create family units where we used to have hostels.
Sir, thank you for joining us today. We've run out of time. We can talk about it. It's something surely that's very concerning, not just to yourself, but I think to all South Africans that, well, our political space is being threatened right now. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, sir.
That is the Deputy Chairperson of the South African Local Government Association, Mr. Sebenzile Ngangeliswe. They're having discussions at very high level right now to deal with this problem. He says strengthening democracy is the answer. What do you think? Tweet us. Tweet us. Is it strengthening democracy or is it a little bit too late? We're asking you, of course, the poll question and the Twitter question. Go there and tell us what you think. Now, let's take a look at what else you can look at on social media. Of course, on Twitter, we start with the hashtag motion of no confidence. This is the big story next week, of course, on Tuesday. However, South Africans are still waiting for the announcement on whether or not the ballot will be in secret. We expect that announcement to happen within the next couple of days or so. Now, condolences continue to pour in for the ANC MP who died in a car accident in Paarl. Other MPs were also injured. It's alleged that, well, the driver did a U-turn into an on freeway. The hashtag is MP crash. In the capital, day 3 of the trial of the plant got underway yesterday. However, due to delays in proceedings, the Dacha couple are running out of time for their expert witnesses to present their research. Donald Abrahams of the University of California was expected to testify yesterday, but it seems as if there are many delays in this case. TOT plant, that's the hashtag. Then in Klipspruit West this morning, protesters wreaked havoc in the Soweto area yesterday and today, really, in relation to a black principal whom they want replaced by a coloured principal at the Klipspruit West Secondary School. Moving further afield, first in history, scientists have successfully edited mutant genes in human embryos to prevent heart deformities. Many people are speculating that this is a step towards designer babies. However, the scientists involved in this breakthrough suggest that the concept of designer babies is very complicated and they are not yet sure that this is entirely possible. That's the hashtag designer babies. Go have a look. Wow. That's all I can say. Let's take a look at our picture of the day now. This one comes from Tlengiwe Lope and it's captioned, "This is bad. May the soul of Baba Khoza rest in peace." I wish a speedy recovery to the other MPs in this case, of course. Mr. Khoza passed away in that accident outside of Paarl yesterday. Now, comment of the day comes from Phumzile Van Dam, or Van Dam, depending where you live. And, of course, talking about, well, the utterances by the CEO of Bell Pottinger, James Henderson, the claims they made no money from the Gupta account because of all the clients they lost as a result. Well, on social media, people are saying, oh, but you certainly did coin it at the time. Now, let's go to the courts. Here in Johannesburg is where we start with 2 men accused of killing best friends, Bongeka Pungula and Poppy Kwabe. They're expected back in the Protea Magistrates Court. They will appear on charges of murder, robbery and kidnapping after the 2 women's bodies were found dumped in Soweto. Now, 43-year-old Alec Magola Motame and 25-year-old Sandile Nkosi were arrested in May and granted bail in June of this year. In the capital, of course, the Dacha couple, as you saw, Middle Clark and Jules Stobbs, they bid to have Dacha legalized in South Africa and it's expected to continue in the High Court. Expert witnesses have yet to take the stand there due to continued delays in the court. Of course, it's slated to be in the High Court until the 25th of August. Then, in Cape Town, a 53-year-old man is expected to appear in the Bishop Lavis Magistrates Court in the Cape Flats in connection with the rape of a 6-year-old Bonteheuwel girl. The child was allegedly raped inside the man's house. The girl's mother reported the matter to police after she said she found her with the man in the bathroom. It's a disturbing trend in the Western Cape. The number is 39 children that have been killed since the beginning of this year. We'll keep you updated on that and other developments. Now, of course, tomorrow we take a look at Women's Month as a tribute to thousands of women of all races that marched to the Union buildings in August of 1956. Yes, every day should be Women's Day. Of course, next week we celebrate Women's Day, Tuesday the 9th. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more on political killings after a short little break.
The Pan-African Parliament as a legislative body could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chipa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune in to Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
Yeah, political killings is a problem. Welcome back. Delegates from 24 African countries who are representatives of the United Nations Electoral Management Body, they paid a visit to KwaZulu-Natal to work on strengthening electoral democracy there and further on the continent. Now, the main purpose was to interact with members of the KwaZulu-Natal legislature, which has had to deal with political killings and tensions.
KwaZulu-Natal has achieved political stability despite many years of political strife before the first democratic elections. Some legislature members were part of the peace efforts in those years.
So to go and address community to say we are behind this peace process. When the national chairperson of the IFP say, IFP, put down your arms, the leader of the ANC say the same thing, we say the same thing. That's how we manage for the province to go to the hotspot areas to make sure that where there is conflict, we must be there before anybody died.
The delegates have just completed UNISA's intensive 4-week academic program, The Management of Democratic Elections in Africa. It's aimed at strengthening democratic electoral systems on the continent. Africa is plagued by the absence of political succession through the ballot box and the weakness of institutions which manage elections.
Availability of resources is one. Then the capacity of the EMB itself is another. And the EMB working with the incumbent government.
We have a presidential and parliamentary election this year. The major challenge is finances, getting the finances. The UN, under its peacekeeping mission, was able to finance all or most of the elections, the budget for the elections for 2005 and 2011.
In strengthening its own democratic electoral system, South Africa has established partnerships with role players.
The other aspect that they were interested in is the partnership between the Electoral Commission and various state arms, in this case the legislature, without also compromising the independence and the impartiality of the Electoral Commission.
Observer missions have also supported the delivery of democratic elections. Renee Heine, SABC News, Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah, that's the National Assembly Portfolio Committee, and police is also visiting KwaZulu-Natal to look at the political killings in the province. The Morani Commission of Inquiry has started to gather information on the killing of councillors in this province since 2014. The commission was appointed by KwaZulu-Natal Premier Willis Mqunu in 2016 to probe the killings there. Now, in the latest incident, 3 ANC councillors in Umzimkhulu were shot at several times. One of them was the former ANC Youth League Secretary General Sindiso Magaka. The committee has just arrived at the Chatsworth Police Station. Let's go there live now. Our reporter is Mlungisi Kumalo. A very good morning to you. I understand, Mlungisi, you're with the Portfolio Committee Chairperson. But before you do the interview, just do a quick scene setter for us.
Well, a very good morning to you. It's a very warm day right here in Chatsworth. Like you said, we are live here. With me, I've got Mr. Francois Buchman, who also happens to be the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee in Parliament for the South African Police. But one critical aspect of this interview is to try and establish why is the Portfolio Committee in KwaZulu-Natal. They arrived here on Monday and their first stop was at the Richards Bay Police Station. And when they got there, there was already a red flag and they were not too impressed. So they've given that particular police station a good 5 days to clean their act together, whereby they are going to also critically analyze some of the key structures in that police station. But to tell you more about it, I've got Mr. Francois Buchman, who will tell us more about their visit today. Mr. Francois, thank you very much for being with us today. Just briefly set the scene for us, tell us why you are here this morning.
Well, we engaged it in to monitor the state of policing in the province. We were this morning looking at the eThekwini region, we specifically in Chatsworth. We were also going this afternoon to Umlazi and look at the station management, performance, but also service delivery. We also invited representatives from the Community Policing Forum also to give input, and the committee wants to evaluate what is the state of policing also in the Metro Durban area.
Mr. Buchman, I understand that this morning the Parliamentary Committee is going to split into 3 groups, whereby you're also going to visit the various departments within this police station. Just briefly tell us more about that, please.
Yes, we've got the Portfolio Committee has got a monitoring tool whereby we scientifically evaluate police stations. The one group will focus on station management itself, the second on the detective services, and the third on auxiliary services. So it's a multidisciplinary approach to actually ascertain what's happening in the station.
Mr. Buchman, you are in KZN, where this province is considered to be a hotspot for political killings. In the last 3 years, over 30 people have been killed and gunned down in what is said to be politically motivated crimes. Now, we also have the Morane Commission that is investigating these crimes. What's going to be your role in all this?
Well, we're very concerned about the unsolved murders and also the so-called political killings in the province. It's a great cause of concern. And it's essential that SABC must apprehend the perpetrators of that. Although there is a special task team in place, we believe more should be done by detective services. We also met this morning with some of the witnesses who appeared at the Morane Commission. They gave us also input, and tomorrow morning we will meet with the SABC management and the province, and also with IPID with regard to allegations that 2 organizations didn't do their work properly.
You speak of IPID. We know that there's been one key witness in the Morane Commission who I can actually quote Mrs. Vanessa Becker, who said that the Cleveland's hostel has become a hotspot and is also a den for hitmen. What's your posture on that?
Well, those allegations must be thoroughly investigated. If there is matters of police collusion or corruption, IPID must investigate it. There must be proper feedback. And of course, South African Police Services, detective services must ensure that those perpetrators are apprehended.
And just one last question. Are you losing the war in KwaZulu-Natal where political killings are involved? Is our police services in tatters? I think that's what everybody wants to know.
Well, it's quite critical that the police service in KwaZulu-Natal must marshal their leadership and their resources to deal with this problem. And the only answer lies in the results. There must be arrests, there must be people brought before court, and that's the only way we're going to solve this problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Francois Buchman. Well, there you heard it from the chairperson himself of the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, who is here to inspect various police stations around the province. And he also touched on a critical key element, is the political killings in the province, where we've had over 90 people that were brutally gunned down. And over back to you in studio.
Mlungisi, thank you very much for that contribution. Yeah, it is indeed very concerning, the high number of political killings happening on our streets right now. Let's go over to Elvis for more.
Thank you, Eben. Now, remember, you can engage with us on the Twitter handle. Of course, we're asking you a question as well as you can. We're conducting that poll on the violence in KwaZulu-Natal. So we'd like to find out from you about those hostels. You know, our political killings reaching crisis point in South Africa. That's the first question in your poll. As you can see there, 155 votes in. 90% of you are saying yes. 10% are saying no. But right now, let's take a look at what is happening. In fact, that's the question before we go there. Let me just remind you of that. Should hostels linked to political violence be closed down? Well, we'll read some of those comments a little bit later, but let's now take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. We start off in Johannesburg, where the Mayor Herman Mashaba has fired his member of the Mayoral Committee for Economic Development, Sharon Peets, for suspected misconduct. Then we also see the President Jacob Zuma's son, Edward Zuma, has missed the deadline to apologize to the ousted cabinet ministers over derogatory remarks and to retract an open letter that he wrote to them. There you see him on the screen. And finally, farmers in the Philippi horticulture area in Cape Town are concerned about the possible loss of agricultural land due to developments. Now, some of these stories you can find on our Facebook page, and there's lots more. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back after that.
Saying that the former minister is now endorsing Ramaphosa as the next president. Campaign time, Prof?
Yeah.
So early.
Let's at least accept that people have a right to expressing themselves in terms of who they support.
But what is lacking very seriously is that there is no that leadership role that is played by the leadership to say, we haven't opened succession and let us deal with those that are campaigning openly, because we haven't opened it as the leadership of the ANC.
What we need in this country is that we need a ruling party or leading party to be able to engage with issues that affect the people.
Our people campaign openly. It weakens the organization. In fact, it makes the policies of the ANC even more popular.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor and catch on analysts unpacking top stories every Sunday from 9 a.m.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the words of our sacred texts? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Now, today is exactly 1 year since the municipal elections last year on the 3rd of August. The elections were regarded as significant in deepening democracy and bringing local government closer to the people. Last week, in the Raymond Mhlaba municipality in the Eastern Cape, the council speaker, Tozama Njobe, was shot and killed after she reported that she had received death threats. The outspoken African National Congress ANC Member of Parliament, Dr. Makosi Khoza, she is currently in the news for publishing death threats to herself and her family over political utterances. What is more concerning is that in the run-up to the 2019 elections, where the contest for power will become more concerted, the stakes are likely to be higher. So will possibly the political killings. Joining us now in our parliamentary studios to talk about the implications of political killings, especially at local level, is the Director for the Centre for Constitutional Rights, Pepelapi Dube. A very good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, what is your reaction to the political killings, especially post-1994, when 90 councillors since 2014 has been killed? And do you think that it's reaching crisis proportions?
Absolutely, it is reaching crisis proportion. And for me, the concerning thing is that despite all of these bodies that are accumulating, there has not been a single conviction. Yes, people have been arrested here and there, but we haven't actually seen a trial. We haven't actually seen conviction. So in a sense, there's a seeming sense of impunity, particularly when these murders are associated with politics. And in a sense, it serves to chill the health of our democracy. It obviously has implications for the manner in which people want to express themselves politically, because it just creates a climate of fear. And I think the main concern for me is the fact that we've been too focused on the killings that we witnessed in the run-up to the first democratic elections in 1994, that we've simply stopped talking about political killings. But the reality is that they are still going on, and not just that, but the justice system appears to be unable to deal with these political killings.
What are the implications of these killings, especially at local government level, where services are expected to be delivered?
Well, I think for me the main concern is that we live in a country with a toxic mix of high crime and very high levels of unemployment, as well as just very unacceptably high levels of inequality. So I think in a sense it creates a high demand for political positions, because I think for a lot of individuals, this access to political power in a sense is also access to basic services, in the sense that it's access to jobs, it's access to housing and other services for members of their family. So in a sense, it creates this toxic mix where people are in politics for simply the wrong reasons. And not just that, but it creates a climate of fear in terms of which people who may want to who may want to make a plausible difference to their communities may be simply too afraid to express their political ambitions. So in a sense, our democracy is in a not very healthy state because of all these factors that I've just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So is there perhaps a concern that these political killings will erode South Africa's democracy?
I think that very much is the concern. I think particularly when you consider threats that have been directed at Makosi Khoza, who is a member of parliament in the National Assembly. I think she's been doing her job in terms of being an elected representative, doing her job in terms of trying to exercise an oversight function. And that oversight function is a constitutional mandate of members of parliament that are within the National Assembly. So if she's receiving threats, it means that in a sense, Parliament is being stopped from going ahead with its constitutional mandate. So in a sense, it means that our democracy isn't in a very healthy state if our members of Parliament can't do their jobs properly, or if they're being hindered from living up to what the Constitution says they should be doing.
What are some of the solutions available to make councillors more accountable to the people?
Well, I think first of all, the sense of impunity for political killings needs to be dealt with, in the sense that we need to establish, a police task force, made up of high-ranking, experienced police officers to ensure that we have convictions for these killings. So, in a sense, it would be clear that anybody who is found guilty of political killings would be dealt with within the court of law. But not just that, but I think it's just important for people to understand the meaning of democracy and just being able to afford other citizens their same political rights, and just not live in a state in which people are being intimidated into silence or being intimidated into making choices which they otherwise wouldn't be making. I think in a sense it very much erodes our democracy if we're not affording each other those values which the Constitution says South Africans should be entitled to.
Thank you so much for your time and joining us, Ms. Dube.
Thank you.
That was the director for the Centre for Constitutional Rights, Pepelapi Dube, joining us right now. But, of course, it's time for Sports Talk with Eben and Kendall.
Yeah, what concerning developments. I certainly feel quite affected if you think about how hard this democracy was fought for, to be overrun, or the threats to be overrun like this through the barrel of a gun. Certainly leaves some sort of taste in the mouth. Anyhow, now Dr. Ivan Khoza, he's accepted the resignation of Orlando Pirates head coach Shell Roonefried's resignation The sudden departure, and Kendall is here, he was as shocked as anyone else.
Well, look, I was shocked because I hadn't really been following what had been said about him prior. About a week ago, 10 days ago, at least a whole bunch of people had already been talking about how this man's head is on the block, how he needs to go. And why? Because for the first time ever, Orlando Pirates finished the season out of the top 8. And he had been brought in as a panacea, as to take over and take Pirates onto a new level. And he'd failed to do that. And I think people were already talking about who and when is he going to get fired and who's going to replace him.
Yeah, but coaches, they keep on firing coaches and coaches and coaches, and the problem is more structural at Orlando Pirates. I think if we are honest, you can't expect coaches to come in and be miracle workers.
No, absolutely not. And you can see in how the look when he came in, the Pirates players, they jacked it up for a few games, got a few draws, and stuff. But good play that they put in. Having said that, they finished the season not looking good. Yes, we don't know how the new season is going to look because we don't have the fixtures yet. But it's pre-season time, and Pirates just lost that match, that must-win match against Kaizer Chiefs over the weekend. And I think it's just looking sad for Orlando Pirates fans that, you know what, Pirates has still not got it right to keep their coach for longer than a very short period. You know what, I think one of the big things that we need to look at, more than anything else, is how it is that a coach from Sweden can come in and within 5 months have decided, you know what, he's got no future in the club.
Yep, there are issues in South African football that need to be addressed. We always end up in the same place, unfortunately. Time for us to take a break. We'll be back with you at the top of the hour.
The Law Society has slammed notices sent to 4 universities to jack up standards or risk losing their LLB courses. The Council on Higher Education issued a stern warning to the universities to conform within 6 months.
I think it will affect the university. I think outside the law faculty, there's a funding issue.
It's been 112 years since Enoch Sontonga died as a relatively unknown composer, choir master and teacher. But today his legacy lives on through his greatest composition, Nkosi Sikeleli Afrika.
For all your news updates, stay tuned to Your World from Monday to Sunday.
He's still going, he pops it up, he's Jacob Peterson. Easy as that, what a response it is from the Cheetahs, brilliant score.
Imran Tahir produced a superb performance with the ball. The Proteas leg spinner put his side in the driving seat, scalping 3 wickets for just 18 runs.
Gifton Gope is flying toward third, and he is there with a triple, his first in the big leagues.
It is a Ferrari front row lockout, unless Hamilton can get on pole, and he can't. Ferrari, for the first time since France in 2008, have locked out the front row.
For all your sports news, keep it locked to Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday from 20:30.
This story is about what happens when we put our differences aside and we come together as a human race.
Salt makes its way out of the kitchen into the art studio.
Normally, you know, salt is for food and stuff, but then here's salt.
The past couple of months, I've grown so much, and I'm just ready to impart what I've learned to
the next Miss South Africa. I wasn't expecting this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm feeling so overwhelmed.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Yeah, hello again, everybody. It's just gone 10 o'clock Central African time. That is, we are live from Johannesburg. I'm with Kendall Mahamate.
Yeah, very interesting discussion we're having today about political killings. The time is right for that kind of conversation because more than 90 councillors have been killed so far.
In South Africa since 2014, that's in the last 3 years alone. It's almost one every week. It's an epidemic, it's a pandemic, and people are fearing for their lives, and good people don't want to go and work in the political space because it's become too dangerous. Interesting developments if you think about it, because what does it say about what's happening in politics? You know, murderers, gangsters and the like are forcing their way into these kind of positions.
The levels of intolerance are actually scary, to be honest.
So we're asking you this question, do you think, oh, the poll, yes, the poll, that's what we're asking. Do you think political killings is reaching a crisis point in South Africa, Kendall? And, well,
we've got 194 votes that have come in so far, and almost 100%, because that's 90%. 90% of our respondents say yes, they think it's reached crisis point.
Absolutely. SALGA meeting with Kokta and the like, and everyone's meeting, but the killings continue. I think it's time. It's time for a sharper focus onto this problem that is political killings. Lechasa tells us political killings are caused by those who want to loot the money, not to assist communities as needed. It's at the heart of the discussion around corruption, says Lechasa.
Yes, and Katleho also comes in on this. It says safety of our citizens comes first. What's the duty of the army if we don't use them? Deploy them in numbers for peacekeeping while solving issues.
That's a recurring theme, Katleho. It's something that people are talking about. Send them into gangland. Send them into these areas in the hostels where criminals are operating with impunity. Take back the streets. That's certainly a yearning from people. But we're also asking you a question about the hostels, Kendall, because these are hotbeds for hitmen. For 500 Rand, apparently, you can get a hitman these days.
Exactly. I mean, it's been said that some hostels are nests for violence, and you can find a hitman who will carry out nefarious deeds on your behalf for very little money sometimes. And that's why this question comes up for you today.
Yeah. Should we just close them down and build family units and rezone these areas? So like Kakarot, who is a Sponelo, he says to us, hostels are no longer the hub of criminal activities. Families live there now. Crime must be curbed from Bryanston to Naledi. That is right, Sponello. But there are some hostels that hasn't been turned into family unions yet, and they continue to operate with impunity there, it seems.
An interesting view nonetheless. Tsonga also says illegal firearms sold to these thieves and hostels are never raided.
That one from Nwani. Keep tweeting us, guys. It's nice to hear these views because it adds so much to the discourse and brings different ideas into even the interviews that we do. So if you have questions, send it to us. I'll certainly try and put it to the experts and the guests, Kendall. But we're asking, of course, our sports question today. We've had a chat.
Yep.
Orlando Pirates, the coach has fallen on his sword.
He's been let go. He's tendered in his resignation and it's been accepted. And we want to find out from you, are you surprised at all by the sudden resignation of Orlando Pirates coach Shell Yonovriet? Mahafa comes in with this. I was waiting for his resignation because nothing changed in the club even after his appointment. Let's hope the new coach will bring something good.
Coaches don't bring a magic wand, unfortunately. Successful clubs are successful for a reason.
It needs to be remembered he came in after the transfer window. He came in halfway through the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can't expect him to have done that much.
He had no chance. McRob tells us a lot of players should be released from the Buccaneer ship as well. Apparently Pirates has a lifetime coach, Kiel was just the trainer. Yeah, that's a scenario that's being punted. That it is. I've grown up with Orlando Pirates, and at times it's the only club with more than 40 players on its books here in South Africa, and some say that is simply too many. 44, 45, close to 50 players on the books. It's too many. The clubs like Manchester United have got 24 players on their books. 24, and that should paint a picture.
Lean, mean machinery.
Yeah. Anyhow, let's get into the news now. Schools have now been closed down in Klipspruit in Soweto as the residents continue their protests there. The NPA says it will soon release a report into the official investigations into state capture. And the victim at the center of the Coffin case, Victim Lotwa, is expected to continue with his testimony in the court sitting in Middelburg this morning. Those are your top stories. Kendall has the top sports.
Ewan, thank you very much. Good morning to you. It's Thursday, it's 5 to Friday, almost Friday. And this is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Chadwick just beginning to click up through the gears right now. Poetry in motion.
South Africa's golden boy in the pool, Electoral, does it again as he wins gold in both the 200-meter freestyle and the 100-meter butterfly event at the FINA Swimming World Cup in Russia.
Now, and McGowan here it is. He's going to get another first-place finish ahead of Barrett of Great Britain.
But we have tried forgot what's been behind us, and we're looking forward. And it starts today.
Orlando Pirates Football Club head coach Shell Yonovriet has tendered his resignation after less than 6 months at the club.
It's always massive to get the recognition from a great athlete like Usain Bolt, but it also takes a lot of responsibility now for me to go out there and work for that recognition that I got.
And ahead of the IWF World Championships in London this weekend, sprint sensation Wade van Niekerk responds positively to praise heaped on him by Usain Bolt. All this in more detail in a few minutes' time, around about 10:40. But don't go anywhere, as Evan has got the news.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall. Very good morning to you if you've just joined us. Our top story at this hour is that schools have reportedly been closed in Klipspruit in Soweto as residents continue to protest in the streets. Traffic authorities have now advised motorists to avoid the R53 in Klipspruit outside Soweto due to these protests going on. Outraged residents blockaded the roads with burning tyres and rocks and set a Patco bus alight in the early hours of the morning. That's the picture you see there now. The residents say governments continuously marginalise the coloured community there and has made the Klipspruit saga a racial issue to deviate attention from important national issues. This after the predominantly coloured community objected to the appointment of a black principal at the Klipspruit West Secondary School last week. Now, a little bit earlier, we spoke to our reporter, Mangoba Nkunu, who gave us an update.
Was outside the Klipspruit West Secondary School. As you'll recall that earlier on we did see some violent scenes taking place here at Klipspruit as residents took to the streets and blockaded the streets with rocks as well as burning tires. They also allegedly hijacked a Patco bus and set it alight. Well, that Patco bus, as we speak now, is still here on the main road to Eldorado Park, and it's been at this stage it's still there, just waiting to be cleared by emergency personnel. But I can tell you at this stage is that the community members are still out here outside the school. They've gathered here where they are holding some sort of a meeting to discuss a way forward with their planned protest. But certainly they are also blocking the entrance to the school, preventing the learners from Klipspruit West from going and attending classes there. And what I can tell you is that there is no schooling currently taking place here, and most of the learners indeed are here on the streets as well, just waiting outside. Most of them just still dressed in their school uniforms, and they're telling us that they've been prevented from going into the school today by the protesting group, and they're saying that certainly looks like today they're going to miss out on school. But we spoke to one of the learners who told us that indeed they felt that that this was indeed not good for their education, as they're saying that they will be missing out on school, and that being this time of the year, we know that this is the third quarter of the year, and certainly it will come as a major disruption to their education as they are going to be writing exams soon, especially matriculants who say that they're going to be beginning their trial examinations very soon, and so they feel that this protest really is going to affect their schooling as well as their preparations for this exam. But certainly that sentiment being very different from what the parents are saying, who are saying that they still maintain that they are not going to accept the appointment of the new principal, saying that indeed that process to appoint the principal was flawed, and therefore they're going to continue with the protest, and the plan goes slow, as you have heard on the previous days before, saying that they want a new principal to be appointed and they want that process to be started up again by officials.
Now we've got a story that's just been confirmed. Singer, actor and former soccer player Dumi Masilela has died. The Arts and Culture Department has confirmed that Masilela died in a hijacking last night. The 31-year-old is best known for his role as a street king on soapy Rhythm City. After a car accident sidelined his professional soccer career at SuperSport United and more than 3 years of rehabilitation, he entered the 8th season of the singing competition Idols in 2012. He made it into the top 18 of the show. Masilela's death comes after that of Kwaito star Nixon Solo, popularly known as Tsekeleke. Now, earlier this week, the Hawks reiterated that they are officially investigating claims of corruption contained in the Public Protector's State of Capture report. This after the National Prosecuting Authority said there was a real basis for such a probe. The unit spokesperson has said that a number of investigations into state corruption have nearly been completed. Now, here at SABC News a little bit earlier, we spoke to the NPA spokesperson, Advocate Luvuyo Mfaku. He says they will be releasing this report shortly.
We indicated earlier, the National Director, in fact, during the SCOPA meeting, that was in May, that after having received the Public Protector report in relation to the so-called state of capture, he constituted a team of prosecutors based at the SCCU to give assistance and guidance to the Hawks in terms of their investigation. So this announcement is not something new. It was constituted in February. The team of prosecutors, they've been giving assistance to the Hawks in terms of guiding their investigations. The investigations are proceeding pretty well. We cannot comment and articulate the position as far as the progress is concerned. We do not want to be seen to be encroaching in the territory of the Hawks. Remember, we're operating in a very complicated space where we need to ensure that we maintain our institutional independence and they maintain theirs, whereas we're giving that kind of assistance. They have indicated that they are hard at work. That is why they are not here today. They have indicated that next week they will be in a position to take the nation into their confidence in terms of giving them the progress in respect of the investigation.
So next week we can expect an update into the investigations? That
was the undertaking that I have received from the spokesperson of the Hawks when the invitation was extended to both of us to come and account to the nation in respect of what the two institutions are doing in respect of these allegations.
Now, the Coffin assault case is continuing in the High Court, sitting in Middelburg in Mpumalanga right now. Proceedings had to be adjourned yesterday when emotions ran high during testimony by the assault victim and his mother.
Victor Mlojwa finally telling his side of the story. He broke down during his testimony, describing how he was punched and kicked several times before he was forced into the coffin. He said he feared for his life as the accused threatened to pour petrol onto the coffin and set it alight. Mlojwa said he begged for his life. His mother couldn't hold back her tears. Emotions ran high in court.
Not all whites are racist, but the manner in which they are not remorseful. Just imagine when Victor was saying that they forced him inside the coffin, and they're just like smiling and look like laughing. And that is so touching to us.
It's actually sad to see what has happened, and for the accused number 1 and 2 for not even feel any remorse or regret towards what he is satisfying. It's upsetting to the public.
The farm workers Willem Oosthuizen and Martins Jackson have pleaded not guilty to the charges of kidnapping, assault and attempted murder. Security will be beefed up in the next coming days of the trial in fear of possible violence that might erupt during court proceedings. Moeli Maslela, SABC News, in Middleburg, Mpumalanga.
Now let's shift our focus back to our theme for today. Yes, we're dealing with intolerance in the shape of political killings. Yes, and we're asking you on our poll. What do you think? Is it a crisis now? Have we reached crisis point? Is it 205 votes? Yeah, 205 votes in, 91. The overwhelming majority saying, yes, it's a crisis now. Now we've got the Marana Commission looking at it. We've got COCTA, we've got SALGA. Everyone's starting to look at it. But is looking going to solve the problem? What does Michael say? Yes, but we all know that these killers are within the governing party. That's a big claim to make. Jamila van der Scape says, these political killings are becoming a major crisis. Perhaps it's time to bring back the death penalty. Well, in other countries they say the death penalty does not deter crime. Mahafa Noel says, definitely, and we need long-lasting solutions to the political killings in South Africa. Yes, this local government association says we need to be deepening democracy. What do you think about that one? Now, political intolerance in the Eastern Cape, it reared its ugly head in the ugliest of ways. In the past year, there have been a couple of political murders, and recently, councillors within the Nelson Mandela Metro received death threats. There's a growing fear that ignoring intimidation will lead to more deaths there.
Intimidation of councillors is very real. In just over a year since the DA took over in the Nelson Mandela Metro, 2 councillors have received death threats via SMS from an alleged hitman hired to carry out their assassination. These 2 councillors were also part of a violent brawl in council last year where they were assaulted by ANC councillors. The 2 ANC councillors now face charges of assault with an intent to cause grievous body harm and will appear in court on the 10th of August. One of the accused, Andile Lungisa, has downplayed the allegations.
In itself is a matter which belongs in the council. We're supposed to be using our own rule book, our own internal processes to conclude the matter, which we've done. It's not a matter which belongs to a court, which belongs to outsiders.
There is a strong call for small-scale intimidations not to be ignored and any signs of political intolerance to be dealt with maturely.
It is a concern, and it's a very real concern because people are dying. And to me, it's a tragedy because it's not the kind of legacy that I think President Mandela would have wanted to be part of the new South Africa and constitutional democracy. We've also seen intimidation in the judiciary. We've seen intimidation of journalists. So political intimidation is becoming a factor in South Africa, and it's simply about intolerance and also fear of losing power.
Security has been beefed up for the 2 councillors who received the death threats. Lerat Utipa, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Yes, political killings are no longer confined to the province of KwaZulu-Natal. As we see, the trend is now spilling over into other provinces like the Eastern and even Northern Cape. Lecturer in politics and conflict studies at the Nelson Mandela University, Ongama Mtinka, joins us from our Port Elizabeth studios in the Eastern Cape this morning to take this discussion a little bit forward. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Abe, and thanks for having me, and good morning to your viewers.
Now, let's start out right at the top. As an analyst, just give us your views. What do we classify as political killings or political assassination? And in this case, why do we see it spilling over now into the Eastern Cape and even into the Northern Cape in some instances?
Thank you, Eben. So political killings would be those that pertain to opponents within the political space resorting to violent means to try and achieve political objectives. In the transition to democracy, there was a huge debate about what is the scope of that action. Is it political killing when it is done by a politician? Or must there be a political objective that is being clearly pursued? You will remember that in the democratic period, when the negotiations for amnesty were taking place, it was resolved that what one would qualify for amnesty if there was a clear political instruction and there was a clear political objective being pursued in order for something to be regarded as a political crime or political killing, such that that person in that time would qualify for amnesty. But if we look at the democratic period, especially in the past 5-10 years, what we see is that it has been more dangerous to be an ANC politician than it has been to be an opposition party politician. Even, I would say, Eben, even in the case of the recent shifts in local government, rulership. If you look at, for example, since Cape Town started, as well as the municipalities in the westerly part of the Eastern Cape, and more recently the metros, the power shift there happened almost seamlessly, including in Port Elizabeth. But where we are seeing this now, intimidation, and the attempt to link it, for example, the recent death threats to the pending case, which police have every right to do. The issue there is not necessarily an issue about governance. And if we go back to that council meeting that turned violent, the issue there was a disagreement about a behavior of a councillor at a particular consultation platform of the municipality. So it was not an issue about whether or not a particular political course of action should be taken.
Yeah. Ongama, you know, time is a little bit short, so I want to escalate this discussion quickly. I spoke to the South African Local Government Association a little bit earlier. Of course, they're meeting with COCTA and other stakeholders to try and get to grips with this problem. They're telling me that they believe deepening and strengthening democracy is the answer to dealing with political killings. But is there a sense that it's a little bit too late to talk about that and different kinds of action needs to be taken already?
Well, I don't think it's too late. I mean, if you look at the concentration of intolerance has largely been in KZN, where you have seen it likely to spill over to the rest of the country, it has been in instances where there is investigations of corruption. And, for example, as we saw in Raymond Mhlaba recently, where the Speaker of Council was shot at because of her stance in corruption. But this is for me, has not necessarily gone to become a systemic problem, in the sense that the entire political system in South Africa is characterized by intimidation. It is a huge concern, it is a huge crisis, but it's largely concentrated. I mean, in Nelson Mandela Bay, for example, if you look at in the past few years, we've seen councillors killed, ANC councillors killed at the time the ANC was in power, precisely because, one, they were seen to be against corruption, for example, the former head of the Human Settlements portfolio. But also, we saw in the research that I'm doing for my PhD, where sources are saying there have been 4 killings which were said to be political, which in the end actually ended up being linked to patronage networks and business interests within the local state. So I don't think that there's only a political solution to this. I mean, some of these are clear criminal acts which should be clamped down upon by the law enforcement agencies. And I think we should guard in South Africa the politicization of these law enforcement agencies, as we are beginning to see also at a national level. So that's where, for me, the concern is. In terms of general tolerance in the political system, we are not doing bad as a country, especially if you look at the recent power shifts and the seamless manner in which they have happened.
I want to ask you around conviction, because we've seen more than 90 councillors killed. We haven't seen a single conviction. Why do you think that is, and why should we be concerned as citizens about that?
So that question actually crystallizes what I was saying earlier on about the politicization of law enforcement agencies. I mean, if we look at the reports coming out of the Moerane Commission, the allegations that even police actually are involved in supplying weapons to some of these hitmen is a concern. That's what we should be concerned about strongly. I think when you have a culture of inconsequence in a country, you are bound to have that phenomenon continuing to increase. So I think the sooner the policing service is depoliticized, the better. And I don't think it is unrelated to the fact that in Polokwane the ANC resolved to have a prosecution-guided investigations in terms of the role of the Hawks rather than a prosecution-led investigation, which, I mean, at that time we were seeing at the time of the Scorpions that prosecution-led investigations tended to have shorter turnaround times in terms of the ability to bring those who are perpetrating intolerance and violence and corruption to book.
Quickly, one more question I've got for you. I want to talk about political education, because that seems to be one of the elements. Is it too late to re-educate around the issue of tolerance? Is it too late to start this conversation, or is it the greed for tenders that's been put ahead of service delivery and these kinds of things that's overtaken politics at a local level?
I think above anything, we need to have a values discussion in South Africa. We need to fight against moral degeneration and ensure that, you know, the values of civil society, the values of mutual coexistence are espoused. And yes, indeed, those who are involved in politics do need to have political education, and the rest of society, in terms of tolerance ahead of election times. And I think as the stakes become higher of the likelihood that at an election power will shift, we may likely see more of this. I mean, we project now that there's a shift in South Africa away from a dominant party system towards multi-partyism, and that may pose even more risks for intolerant behavior if we do not engage in public education about political behavior and morals and standards.
Ongama, thank you very much for joining us. Very, very insightful views about a problem that certainly concerns all of us here in South Africa. That's lecturer in politics and conflict studies at the Nelson Mandela University, Ongama Mtinka. Now, that's down in the Eastern Cape, and a little bit further north in KwaZulu-Natal, there seems to be no end in sight to the political killings that are happening in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Advocate Maruma Morane, SC, is the chairperson of a probe into political killings in KwaZulu-Natal, and has expressed shock at the wave of political killings that are continuing long after the local government elections took place in August of last year. Now, according to statistics presented by veteran violence monitor and analyst Mary de Haas, most political killings are linked to factions and power struggles within the ANC. The bulk of the killings have taken place the Gleblands and Kwamashu hostels in Durban, Escort in the Midlands, and in Njanga, Western Durban. A spate of pre-election murders were recorded in Newcastle, Ladysmith, and the Zululand towns of Nongoma, Bongola, and Ndume. Now, Mary de Haas joins us in our Durban studio to give us a little bit more insight. A very good morning to you, Mary. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, everybody.
Now, Mary, just give us an oversight. What is happening in KwaZulu-Natal with regards to political killings?
Well, there's a number of people, as you've mentioned, being killed since, I guess, if you want to start the beginning of last year and the run-up to the local government elections. Since then, there's probably been almost 40 people killed, excluding the killings in Cleveland, and we have a number for that, which is from March 2014, there's been 90 or so people killed there in what was very clearly intra-ANC conflict. Now, the other killings that have happened both before and after the elections, as I said to the Morani Commission and others, these are people whose names we include as politically linked killings. These are people who are either councillors, councillor candidates, or prominent members of their local party branches, or sometimes local government people who are known to be perhaps dealing with issues, and there's a lot of corruption in the area, and we know that some of the people who've died in those positions have been anti-corruption. It's a guess, because the other thing is, just because people are councillors or party officials, the killing may be motivated by, for example, business interests, taxi interests, or perhaps even personal relationships. But the problem is, and this is the crux of the problem, that there are no, as at now, there are no convictions for any of the killings since the beginning of last year. There are no convictions for any of the Cleveland's killings for the last 3+ years. There have been arrests with regard to the killings in other areas that I mentioned, you know, the 38, 40, whatever the figure is now. There have been a handful of arrests, and I think there's 1 or 2 cases in progress. So this is the problem, and we know that many of these killings are carried on by hitmen, because they're very well-trained people who've obviously done their reconnaissance beforehand. They know where the victims will be. They're shot often in the head, like the guy who was killed at the court at Umlazi, the Cleveland's man, who was under threat of death, and the police have been told that he was shot dead at court. His killers have never been convicted. The killing was obviously someone trained. And that's the crux of the problem. We, you know, until you get people in court, until you hear the context, we assume these are politically linked because we know the context is a political one. And we know the people were involved in politics or anti-corruption. But what you need is convictions. And the problem with that is that you often will only get, if you're lucky, you'll get the hitman. Now, at the moment, it's not like the 80s or the 90s where the opposing parties were very clear. You know, you could differentiate, the warlords were leading from the front. But now it's much more covert and obscure as to who is directing the hitmen. So that's the crux of the problem. The fact that there's hitmen all over the place, some of them linked to taxis. You know, the taxi guys are supposedly also doing other killings. And the problem gets back to policing. You know, what's crime intelligence doing? Why are there no convictions? These are the real questions.
Mary, I want to ask you about the Morani Commission and the work that they are embarking on. Are you hopeful that, firstly, the Commission will get to the bottom of the killings and solve it eventually?
I don't think they can do that. And I'll tell you why. I mean, they can only hear evidence, so it depends on who comes forward. And there are people who are too scared to come forward. There was one witness a couple of weeks ago who came forward. He testified in camera at the Morani Commission from Cleveland's, and then he got threatening messages that he was going to be killed. So, I mean, who leaked that information? And some people, I mean, if there are witnesses and You know, there is talk of witnesses in cases who are too scared to go to the police because they don't trust the police. They're not going to go to the Morani Commission either. So the Morani Commission can make findings only based on the evidence before it. Now, even assuming we don't know what the findings will be, the Commission is still hearing evidence. I think one of their briefs, though, is to go back and to check the dockets. And that may be very positive because the rest of us don't have access to dockets to find out why there has been no progress and whether the cases were properly investigated. There's a problem, though, in that the chief investigator for the Commission has just stepped down as head of detectives in the province, and he was in charge of deploying task teams to investigate the killings with a conspicuous lack of success. So whether he'll be freer to do better work with the Commission, I don't know, you know. But people say, well, you know, how can we go to him because we've already given evidence, given information to his task teams, and some of them giving evidence to or some of them dealing with the task teams have been tortured because police torture is a serious, serious problem in this province, especially torture using plastic bags. You know, that apartheid used to like using the tubing method. That's rife. And because it leaves very little in the way of evidence behind it. You need a specialist pathologist. We have a problem, a very serious problem in this province with dysfunctional forensic mortuary services, lack of pathologists. So the police get away with this torture, and some of the torture has been done, by the police, the Umlazi police, especially, who were supposedly policing Glebelands, and even the Public Protector's report recommends that they not be involved in Glebelands policing, but there has been involvement in torture by members of task teams. So the Morani Commission certainly is important in hearing all this evidence, in giving people the opportunity to come forward. But the problem, as I see it, and I think they can do pretty good work too if they look at all those dockets of political killings and assess the role of the police and whether they did what they should have done. And as I said, the problem with policing, we have crime intelligence that's supposed to find the hitmen and the guns. Everybody in Glebelands knows who they are. So many people will tell you who they are, that there's a policeman supplying guns. And when you write to the police and say investigate, you don't get a response. So if they can throw some light on why we've made no progress in actually arresting or convicting the perpetrators, because the other thing is the police make lots of arrests and most of them are withdrawn from lack of evidence. So there's a prosecution problem there because they're not guiding the police. So even when, despite whatever findings the Morani Commission will make, firstly, we need the report. Some of these commission reports aren't even released publicly. Second, we need follow-up action, because it's the police that are going to have to take it forward and take cases to court.
Mary, just to conclude quickly, we're seeing this kind of behaviour is now morphing into other provinces in South Africa. We see it happening in the Eastern Cape. Of course, Ethel Trollop is saying it's intolerance and a fear of losing power that they're seeing developing there. Is there a fear that this could become normal business elsewhere or in the entire political space in South Africa?
Look, KZN has got its own specific dynamics. I mean, we have a history of violence. There's a culture of violence for solving political problems. It's never gone away. It just flares up. We have extremely bad policing in this province. I mean, we've got some good guys in the police, but they're not deployed properly. Management has a huge problem. We've had years of chaotic management in the province. So the detectives are badly trained and not properly deployed. CIS. Now, other parts of the country, don't forget that historically this province has been a base for deploying hitmen. We saw that in the 90s with the violence in Gauteng. It was all orchestrated from this province. And don't forget the taxi networks are implicated in some of us, and they're countrywide. There are, I mean, even without KZN, there are political killings in other parts of the country. People are killed because they're standing up against corruption. Now, it's difficult to forecast whether we're going to impact on that. Certainly the Eastern Cape is very accessible, and there are allegations of local hitmen having been used, for example, in taking out a man who was opposed to mining in the Eastern Cape. And as I said, from here, don't forget there's traffic around the country all the time, particularly between here and Gauteng, taxis, hitmen. So it's a guess. I mean, it all boils down to making sure we get effective policing and a criminal justice system that works. You know, a political violence is just criminal violence with a political motive. And, you know, we've got a violence problem in this country. We've got a very low conviction rate for serious crime. We've got a very ineffectual IPID in this province. And we need to do something about that if we're going to get to the root and stop the political killings.
Mary, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your views on political killings in KwaZulu-Natal, Thank you for joining us today. That was veteran violence monitor and analyst Mary de Haas talking to us on political killings in KwaZulu-Natal. I can tell you, more than 90 councillors have died at the barrel of a gun in the last 3 years alone here in South Africa. Now, let's shift our focus to what is happening on the continent. Now, just a day before the presidential election in Rwanda, the country's expatriates here in South Africa are casting their ballots in the capital, Pretoria. President Paul Kagame of the small Central African nation is widely expected to score an easy victory in tomorrow's vote. But let's cross to our reporter, Patricia Fasaki, at the Rwandan High Commission in Pretoria. Very good morning to you, Patricia.
Good morning, Eben. Yes, you're right. We're here at the Rwandan embassy here in the heart of Hatfield, Pretoria, where, of course, special votes have been underway since very early this morning. Now, we have seen people from the diaspora making their way to the embassy to obviously come and cast their votes. Now, there are 3 voting stations in SADC that have been selected, Pretoria being one, the other one is in Cape Town, and the third one is in Maputo, Mozambique, where people, of course, can go and vote. Now, we have had people who came to cast their votes from all over the continent. Just now, we spoke to a gentleman who flew in from Togo, and he said it is very important for him, and hence he took time out of his busy schedule to make sure that he also makes his cross in his countries. Of course, third general elections. Today is the special votes, but tomorrow will, of course, be the official day when the third elections will be taking place in Rwanda. Right now, I am joined by the High Commissioner for Rwanda here in South Africa, and that is His Excellency Vincent Garega. Mr. Garega, just take us through how many people from the diaspora are registered to come and vote here today.
Thank you very much. We have about 1,000 potential voters registered in Maputo, Mozambique, and in Cape Town, and here in Pretoria. So far, we've had like more than 100 who have casted their votes since this morning.
And everything seems peaceful. It is business as usual. And I see you've been exchanging pleasantries with a lot of the people who come and vote. Are you happy with how the process has been going so far?
We are very happy and impressed by the commitment by Rwandans. The first voters at 7 o'clock came from KZN, so it means they slept almost on a bus. And we have, as you said, someone from Togo with a family living here who joined. We have seen people from Northwest. So far, so good. It's peaceful, and it shows Rwandan commitment to their country.
You also got news from the other 2 stations, Mozambique and the one in Cape Town. What's the information that you got from there?
They all started at 7 and they are getting busy. It's a working day. We will close at 8 p.m., but people are coming in and out as we go.
But the ultimate focus is on tomorrow, when you said earlier about 6 million of Rwandans are expected to go to the polls to cast their votes in Rwanda, of course. Tell us more about that process. How are things at home?
At home, things are peaceful. We have been experiencing a very peaceful campaign with 3 candidates, including the incumbent President Paul Kagame. And all went smooth, no accident, no crash, no riots. So we expect the polls tomorrow to be as peaceful as the campaign time.
And the news that has been coming in, reports that are making the rounds, is that the incumbent president, Paul Kagame, is going to get another term, almost a landslide victory, as many have been predicting. But there's also criticism that has been leveled against him. As we know, he has amended the constitution to get a third term, and that would mean it's his third seven-year term that he will start if he wins tomorrow's election. But the criticism that he is enhancing dictatorship in your country.
Looking at the referendum, how the people of Rwanda insisted he should come back, yet he has decided earlier that he will end with the second mandate. We believe definitely he may or will win, as predicted by what we saw in the referendum and what we saw in the campaign. But we cannot proclaim that before, because there's competition. So let's see the outcome. As far as dictatorship or governance in Rwanda is concerned, I think people who do not understand our constitution, our history, analyze us using their own lens. We have a constitution that is very clear about how Rwanda is governed. We don't run confrontational, but consensus democracy. So for people who are used to confrontational democracy, it's so quiet, so boring for them to understand democracy. But all our policies emerge from the very lowest level, and sensitization and communication between the leaders and the people of Rwanda is so strong. Performance contracts are well implemented. Rwanda Progress is a result of transparency, service delivery, and Rwanda has been rated by different agents, including the World Economic Forum, as the most effective state in the continent and the 7th globally for effectiveness. We also we have amended our media law in 2012. So we have 80 online newspapers. We have 11 TVs and only one is public. We have 34 radio. And 5 years ago, it was not the case, so many years ago, it was not the case. So the press is free. We even have CNBC in Rwanda, The Nation from Kenya in Rwanda, Voice of America on FM, 24 hours in Rwanda. So there's nothing like oppressing media or oppressing opposition. Although we have people who committed genocide, and we have fugitive criminals from Rwanda who are outside try to say that they ran away from bad governance or so to justify their asylum. But the majority of Rwandans will prove it at the polls. And the polls are in diaspora, where people are free to say whatever they want if they think they are not free in Rwanda. So we will see what comes out of it. But so far it's peaceful. The response is so positive. Wherever Rwandans are, other embassies are also registering positive results. And tomorrow in Rwanda, it will be much more vibrant than it is definitely in diaspora.
In your last elections in 2010, President Paul Kagame won, I think, 93% of the votes. And that is already an indication that people perhaps want him in power.
They definitely want him. They ask for him. He has never changed the constitution, as it is being said in the media. The people of Rwanda requested 4 million people out of 6 million voters have written petitions and go to parliament to check the petitions and to confirm the petitions. And as I said, if you can see the campaigns, go and Google, you see people coming in thousands and millions. And campaigns in Rwanda is not a place where they give you beer or free money or free anything. You come voluntarily and you express yourself. There are strong reasons. That country was in shambles in '94. And this president has helped us with skills and wisdom to reunite, and now the economy of Rwanda is transforming. Poverty reduction is there to be seen.
All right. Right. Thank you so much. Of course, that was the High Commissioner here at the Rwandan Embassy, and that is His Excellency Vincent Garega, who's just given us a layout of what's been happening since early this morning with the special votes taking place ahead of Rwanda's third national elections that will take place in that East African country tomorrow, the 4th of August. Of course, as he said, everything seems under control. It is all systems go right here at the embassy in Cape Town, in Maputo, Mozambique, where the other voting stations are at. And in his home country, of course, everything there is also in order. And as we have said earlier, at this stage, it seems more likely that the incumbent President Paul Kagame will again be president after the elections conclude, of course, tomorrow. As we know, in 2010, during the country's last elections, he won the majority of the votes. And, of course, now he will be standing for his third term, and that means another 7 years at the helm of that country. So we'll just monitor how things go here and, of course, cast our eyes to tomorrow. But, Eben, I think for now it is back to you in the studio as we continue to monitor things here on the ground.
Thanks, Patricia. Patricia Fasaki at the Rwandan High Commission. Let's go over to Kendall now for sport.
A quick sports roundup of all the big stories coming out. As you know, tomorrow the Athletics Championships start out in London. And South Africa's sprint sensation Wade van Niekerk, the athlete identified by Usain Bolt as the next trailblazer for global athletics, is adamant that he has the ability and potential to become the face of the sport. Van Niekerk will be a main attraction at the IAAF World Championships that start on Friday in London. The gods are smiling on the 25-year-old, a strong challenger for the 200-meter event after Canadian sprinter Andre de Grasse has pulled out after suffering a grade 2 hamstring strain, which gives Wade a chance for a double gold, 200 and 400.
It is highly possible that Van Niekerk could upstage Usain Bolt's farewell event by pulling off the 200 and 400 meters double that has not been achieved since Michael Johnson in 1995. Van Niekerk is also being tipped to better the 400 meters world record of 43.03 seconds that he took from Johnson at the Rio Olympic Games last year. With Canada's de Grasse out of his way, the 25-year-old might rewrite the history books by winning the double.
I'd love to speak more positive about the 400 meters. So I don't want to say the word desperate because I still have so much that I have to achieve in the 400 meters. But yes, I'd love to invest more time in the 100 and 200.
The day after Bolt sang his praises, Van Niekerk said he can handle the expectations being heaped upon him.
It's a massive honor, especially the person he is and what he's done for track and field and the great heights that he has achieved as an athlete. It's always massive to get the recognition from a great athlete like Usain Bolt, but it also takes a lot of responsibility now for me to go out there and work for that recognition that I got. And obviously I appreciate every positive seed that gets sown in my life.
Look at that start from Akani Simbine. Van Niekerk believes his compatriot Akani Simbine is a big threat in the 200 meters. As the only man in the world to have broken 10 seconds for 100 meters, 20 seconds for 200 meters and 44 seconds for 400 meters, Van Niekerk is spoiled for choice.
Yeah, I'm feeling quite good. I think all my events actually I've betted this far, and that's the 100, the 200 and the 300, and then the 400 meters. When you look at entering the European season, I've started off with quite great performances for the year, so I'm definitely in a good space when it comes to producing great performances.
The South African also stressed that he wants and needs to improve every year, with his ambitions for the future being a serious challenger in the 100 meters. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, from one athlete who's celebrating for the golden beauty that is bringing to the sport to another who's not so much. Nedbank Central Gauteng runner Luisas Leballo, South African long-distance runner, has been banned for 8 years after testing positive for EPO. Louisa Leballo's 39 was tested out of competition on the 20th of March. This is according to the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport. Now, before an adverse result was returned, she represented South Africa at the World Cross Country Championships in Kampala, Uganda. Now, Leballo won the Spar Ladies 10 kilometers in Cape Town on the 2nd of April in a 32-minute, 55-second personal best. And 13 days after that, she came third in the Two Oceans Half Marathon, also in a career best time. She achieved 2 more bests on the track this season in the 5,000 meters, this back in February, and the 10,000 meters in March. It's also alleged that the Pretoria athlete had tried to persuade the doping control officer from South African Institute for Drug-Free Sports to cancel the test. CEO of the Institute for Drug-Free Sports, Khalid Galant, said the finding on Leballo's attempt to subvert the process should serve as a warning to athletes that attempting to coerce or intimidate a doping control officer was itself a prosecutable offence. She has been banned for 8 years, which means she will not be running competitively at least until she's about 47. Now, the South African cricket team is hoping that the momentum of a topsy-turvy series swings back their way tomorrow. The Proteas will begin the 4th and final test against England at Old Trafford in Manchester, needing to win to level the series. They won the 2nd test with ease, but were beaten in the 1st and 3rd matches of the series by big margins.
The test at the Oval was a difficult one for the Proteas, in which they didn't really perform well enough with either the bat or the ball. Their fight back wasn't aided much by the problem Vernon Philander was facing, as he spent time in hospital mid-match to be treated for dehydration brought on by a viral infection. But even at 70% he contributed. Fortunately, he says his problems are behind him now.
I think, we've got an honesty policy within the side. We all admitted it wasn't our best estimate. As players, we take ownership for our performances. I think we let ourselves down with the bat in the first innings. And, we're brutally honest about it. So, looking forward to correct those mistakes in this one. And hopefully we can, go level in the series.
All the players have been hard at work at the nets, hoping to improve all aspects of their play. Despite the big defeat, no changes are expected to the side. Faf du Plessis has made it clear Heino Kun will be given a full run, opening alongside Dean Elgar, even though youngster Aiden Markram is there with the squad. Chris Morris has also been given a vote of confidence. There's been lots of rain in the region over the past few weeks, so even if the skies are clear for the test, conditions will favour swing and seam, so discipline from the bowlers will be key for both teams. Janet Witten, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, news that broke last night right here on SABC, footage from the weekend's Carling Cup at the FNB Stadium came to light. In it, one witnesses the moments leading up to the stampede that took place, resulting in the horrific and tragic deaths of 2 people. Now, fans seem to break open security gates and rush the turnstiles in an attempt to watch the Soweto derby between Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. In the minute-and-a-half video, fans are seen breaking through at least 2 gates. As the first gate opens, some fans are seen falling to the ground and being trampled on as dozens rush towards the second layer of barricades which lead to the turnstiles of the stadium entrance. Although present throughout the chaos, security guards were helpless as the number of gate crashes poured. Some fans are overheard encouraging each other, saying, "Siyangena, Siyangena." Now, the aftermath of the stampede left 2 people dead and at least 16 injured. The inquiry will carry on. As you know, PSL has also constituted their own investigation. We've got some tweets now which have come through after the resignation, sudden for some, of Shell Yonovret, Orlando Pirates' coach. Now, Macmillan Zulu says, Khoza is a problem at Pirates. Change the management, not the coaches. This is an answer to a question to you when we ask you, are you surprised by Yonovret's sudden resignation? And Macmillan has got an opinion there. Siafana says, no, I wasn't surprised at all. Hashtag Shell Yonovret. Maybe you were part of those conversations a few weeks ago when people were saying he's probably going to be going. Ayatollah El Sultan says, not at all. Ivan Khoza wanted it, and that's why I accepted it without hesitation. For him, it's better to keep those cows, but coaches must leave. Not happy with the players at Orlando Pirates. That one, Michael says, I'm not at all surprised. I don't know why he was hired in the first place. Mr. Khoza must bring back Mr. Ruud Krol, because that's where all our problems started. And we've got the very last one that we're bringing to you now. Not surprised at all, I don't see his football star. Now, to him, South African football was difficult. Now, you know what? I'll tell you, it's going to be a very interesting what comes off with everything that we've been talking about with regards to Shell Univert resigning, all the different investigations that have been instituted around what happened at the FNB Stadium. The timing, I could say the least, it's a little unfortunate, but remains to be seen what's going to come of all the investigations, as well as who is going to be taking. Some people say Misho is going to be taking his place at Orlando Pirates. That's where we leave it. I do know that as we're standing by to bring you the weather forecast.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Let's take a look at your weather details over South Africa. Still expecting partly cloudy skies over the northern parts. Towards the southern parts, we are expecting partly cloudy over Western Cape. Isolated showers along the coastal regions. A warning of high fire danger over the interior of Northern Cape for today. Tomorrow, still expecting partly cloudy skies. More showers expected over Western Cape going to Eastern Cape and along the coastal regions of KwaZulu-Natal. Otherwise, partly cloudy to clear skies over the Northern Cape and some parts of Northwest. 25 is forecast for Pretoria and partly cloudy skies expected. Polokwane at 21, 30 for Uppington. Sutherland at a maximum of 16 and 15 over Cape Town. Cloudy skies and very isolated showers can be expected for today. Komani sitting at a maximum of 21 and sunny skies expected over those regions. Over Zimbabwe, we're still expecting our temperatures to be in the low 20s. Bulawayo at 23 degrees and 22 in Harare. Victoria Falls at 26. Sunny skies expected. Windhoek at 24. Beira at 25. Nampula will be hot at a maximum of 30. Over Madagascar, we're still expecting partly cloudy skies and very isolated showers. Victoria will be sunny at a maximum of 31. Over the interior of DRC, up to 60% chance of showers can be expected over the northern parts. Juba at a maximum of 32 and 25. In Kampala, Libreville sitting at 25. Rwanda at 29 degrees. Over the northern parts, we're still expecting clear skies in Libya and Egypt, but isolated showers can be expected over the interior of Algeria. Going to the southern parts, 30% chance of showers can be expected, up to 60% chance of showers, and going to 80 over Central Africa Republic. Going to Sudan, we are expecting 30% chance of showers, but over Ethiopia, going to Eritrea, we are expecting up to 60% chance of showers for today. Tomorrow, up to 80% chance of showers from the interior going to the southern parts of Nigeria. So please do take note of that if you are in those regions, as Lagos has been flooded already, so that may continue in Niger. 30% chance of showers going to the western parts over Senegal and Gambia, up to 80% chance of showers expected for tomorrow. Your temperatures, we're seeing 31 in Jerusalem, 41 in Riyadh and Makkah. Khartoum as well, Addis Ababa sitting at 21, and if you are in Agadez, do expect a maximum of 39. Over Nigeria, Lagos, we are expecting our temperatures to be in the high 20s, 27. That is all. Now Yando.
1100 hours Central Africa time. This is the final hour here on the newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendo Makamad.
Jumbo Africa. Now today the focus is on more than 90 councillors, Kendall, that has been killed since 2014. And of course we're looking at that issue, and that is why we're asking this question on our poll.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to find out how you can enter this conversation by telling us, are political killings reaching a crisis point in South Africa? Do you think they are? Do you think they're not? Please tell us.
Let's take a look at the poll. So 228 votes in. 90% of South Africans and people on this continent, on the African continent, are suggesting that it is a political crisis.
The voting numbers have gone up. However, the percentages have not changed. 90% saying yes, definitely crisis point. 10%. And I'm wondering what those 10% are thinking.
Well, I wonder too. So let's take a look at what you are telling us. Jamila van der Skyf says if we have the death penalty back, there would be more justice, and such issues like political killings might be reduced.
Dipanza says, and the ruling party is in denial about it.
Those are some of your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also focusing on Glebelands, the hostel in Umlazi in KZN that has been connected to the killings and the political violence and are said to be the nest of all these hitmen and the activities happening there, Kendall.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So we want to find out from you, what do you think? Should hostels linked to political violence be closed down? What do you think?
If you look at that picture there, where the question is that there's the Glebelands hostel in the background. There's a hostel called Russia. What does that mean? Well, this is what you are telling us. Lebogang is saying it's not a matter of hostels. Political killings are linked to other social ills in our society. Unemployment, poverty, inequality, the three-headed beast, says Lebogang.
Very level-minded view that. Kakarot says hostels are no longer the hub of criminal activities. Families live there now. Crime must be curbed all the way from Bryanston to Naledi.
Yes, doesn't matter where it is, it should be curbed. But we're also asking you a sport question today, and we want to know, Kendall.
Well, Shell Jonofriet, Orlando Pirates' coach, 5 months in his job, has decided to leave. And the chairman of the club has accepted his resignation. Are you surprised by Jonofriet's sudden resignation?
What the knall is happening there? Lechasa says, I'm not surprised at all. I mentioned that he is not fit to hold office. Well, that's Lechasa.
Mahafa says, I was waiting for his resignation because nothing changed in the club even after his appointment. Let's hope the new coach will bring something good.
Maybe they need to look in South Africa instead of abroad.
That might be the answer.
Well, those are some of your thoughts on the matter, but let's now get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Schools have reportedly been closed in Klipspruit as residents take to the streets. The National Prosecuting Authority says it will soon release a report into the official investigations into state capture. And singer-actor Dumi Masilela of Rhythm City fame dies in a hijacking. Now, those are all your headlines. But before we get there, in fact, let me just also give you another headline. President Jacob Zuma expresses shock at the death of an ANC Member of Parliament and Member of Parliament's Basic Education Portfolio Committee, Timothy Khosa. Those are some of your headlines. But before we get there, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Quite a lot in the news I can see, and also a lot of crossings that we've got. I get to it very fast. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
Chandler just beginning to click up through the gears right now. Poetry in motion.
South Africa's golden boy in the pool, Chandler Claude, does it again as he wins gold in both the 200-meter freestyle and the 100-meter butterfly events at the FINA Swimming World Cup in Russia.
Now, and McClough, here it is. He's going to get another first-place finish ahead of Barrett of Great Britain.
But we have tried forgot what's been behind us, and we're looking forward. And let's start today.
Now, we've got a story about how Orlando Pirates Football Club head coach Shell Jonofriet has tendered his resignation after less than 6 months at the club.
It's always massive to get the recognition from a great athlete like Usain Bolt, but it also takes a lot of responsibility now for me to go out there and work for that recognition that I got.
And ahead of the IAAF World Championships in London, sprint sensation Wes van Niekerk responds positively to praise heaped on him by Usain Bolt. All this, should we have time, we'll bring to you at about 11:35. For now, it's back to Elvis, who's got it.
Schools have reportedly been closed in Klipspruit as residents take to the streets. Traffic authorities have advised motorists to avoid the R53 in Klipspruit outside Eldorado Park in Soweto due to the protest action. Outraged residents blockaded the road with burning tyres and rocks and set a Putco bus alight in the early hours of this morning. The residents say that government has continuously marginalised the coloured community and has made the Klipspruit saga a racial issue to deviate attention from important national issues. Now this after the predominantly coloured community objected to the appointment of a black principal at the Klipspruit West Secondary School last week. Now, we earlier spoke to our reporter Mangoba Nkunu for an update on the issue there in Klipspruit.
People are still demonstrating here outside the Klipspruit West Secondary School. As you'll recall that earlier on we did see some violent scenes taking place here at Klipspruit as residents took to the streets and blockaded the streets with rocks as well as burning tires. They also allegedly hijacked a Patco bus and set it alight. Well, that Patco bus, as we speak now, is still here on the main road to Eldorado Park, and it's been at this stage it's still there, just waiting to be cleared by emergency personnel. But I can tell you at this stage is that the community members are still out here outside the school. They've gathered here where they are holding some sort of a meeting to discuss a way forward with their planned protest. But certainly they are also blocking the entrance to the school, preventing the learners from Klipspruit West from going and attending classes there. And what I can tell you is that there is no schooling currently taking place here, and most of the learners indeed are here on the streets as well, just waiting outside, most of them still dressed in their school uniforms, and they're telling us that they've been prevented from going into the school today by the protesting group, and they're saying that...
That's our reporter, Mangoba Mchunu, a little bit earlier. Now, Minister of Communications, Ayanda Dlodlu, is currently briefing the media on the outcomes of the cabinet meeting in Pretoria that took place on Tuesday. Let's now cross there live.
To the country, to showcase the country to the international community. South Africa has previously hosted world-class events such as the All Africa Games, the Cricket World Cup, the 2010 FIFA World Cup, and many other conferences, symposia, and meetings. As the country, we have learned that these past experiences, particularly the cost overruns and collusion which accompanied 2010. As a result of this, government refused to sign an open-ended blank check which led to South Africa withdrawing its bid to host the Commonwealth Games. Cabinet was apprised on the spin-offs from such an event. South Africa already has the requisite infrastructure to host the tournament without allocating a budget for infrastructure development. Sports is said to be one of the most effective drivers of nation building, and the rugby sports program would enhance this cohesion. The program, to be rolled out throughout the country leading to 2023, will leave a lasting legacy for the development of rugby in underprivileged communities. Cabinet has approved the overall proposed package for this tournament, which is an economic bid, which would minimize the demands on the fiscus as well as stimulate economic activity, employment, and empowerment. The tournament will contribute to stimulating our economy by supporting government priorities, especially as it relates to preferential procurement and adherence to Sports Transformation Charter and the sharing of profits derived. The event will further boost our tourism and hospitality sector. Cabinet approved the establishment of the Interministerial Committee on World Rugby Cup 2023. The IMC will direct the bidding process for the World Cup 2023 and ensure the country benefits economically from this event. The Minister of Sports and Recreation, Mr. Thulas Nxesi, will hold a separate briefing to unpack this bidding process. That will happen after the post-cabinet briefing, and that is why Minister Nxesi is here with us. Cabinet approved the intellectual property policy of South Africa, Phase 1 in 2017, for the publication in the Government Gazette for public comments. This responds to the National Development Plan's call for greater emphasis on innovation, improved productivity, more intense pursuit of knowledge economy, and better exploitation of the comparative and competitive advantages that South Africa holds. The IP policy is an important policy instrument in promoting innovation, technology, research and development, creative expression, consumer protection, industrial development, and more broadly, economic growth. Cabinet approved the draft Green Transport Strategy to be published for public comment. This strategy will form the cornerstone of policy development within the transport sector regarding the lowering of the GHG emissions. The aim of this strategy is to minimize the adverse impact of transport on the environment while addressing current and future transport demands based on sustainable development principles. The transport systems form the back of South Africa's economic activity by enabling the movement of people and goods. However, emissions from the transport sector amount to 10.8% of the country's total greenhouse emissions. with road transport being responsible for 91.2% of these emissions. South Africa has pledged a GHG emissions reduction target of 34% by 2020 and 42% by 2025. And this contributes to South Africa being a responsible global citizen. Can I have yours? Cabinet approved that the Department of Home Affairs can reopen the reapplication process for the current Zimbabwe special permit holders under certain conditions. The initial special dispensation for Zimbabwe was approved in 2009 to document Zimbabwean nationals who were in South Africa illegally. Their permits expire on the 31st of December 2017. The Minister of Home Affairs, Professor Mkhize, will hold a separate briefing to explain the conditions and the process to be followed once the reapplication process opens. Cabinet approved the South African Mint Company's designs for 2012 commemorative color coins series of flowers and birds of the Western Cape Coast Biosphere Reserve. This is in addition to the commemorative and circulation coin ranges to be issued in 2017. Cabinet approved the publication of the Deeds Registries Amendment Bill of 2017 for public comment. It amends the Deed Registries Act 1937 so as to improve and enhance application and the implementation of the Act. The bill will also streamline and enhance administration and registration of deeds. Cabinet expressed condolences to the family of 2 soccer fans who lost their lives during the stampede. The President has constituted a ministerial committee of inquiry to investigate the circumstances that led to this tragedy, and Minister Nxesi will speak at length on that one. On appointments, all appointments are subject to the verification of qualifications and the relevant clearances. The Cabinet has concurred with the recommended candidate to be appointed Mr. Lifense Kaitzen Radikeledi, reappointed as National Treasury Representative to the Board of the Export Credit Insurance Corporation of South Africa. The extension of the term of office of Ms. Thabang Charlotte Christine Mampane as the Commissioner of the National Lotteries Commission. Professor Nebutanda, reappointed as Chairperson of the National Lotteries Commission. Ms. Fadila Eten Lagadin, as member of the Arts and Culture National Heritage, National Historical, Natural, Cultural, and Architectural Heritage Distribution Agency of the Board of the NLC. Mr. Sunrise Vusumuzi Mkhize as Director General of the Department of Arts and Culture. Ms. Tatagahle Jordan Gyani as Deputy DG, ICT, International Affairs and Trade at the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services. The reappointment and appointment of non-executive directors to the boards of the Development Bank of Southern Africa for a period of 3 years or until 31st July 2020. That is Ms. Anuradha Singh, it's a reappointment. Ms. Gugum Tetwa, another reappointment. Professor Mark Swilling, another reappointment. Ms. Zanele Monakhutla, an appointment of the first appointment. Ms. Lufuno Mutsarani, Mr. Lufuno Mutsirani, Ms. Bulelwa Ndamase, Ms. Pinky Nqetho, Ms. Litlohonolo Meko, Mr. Blessing Mudavanu, appointment and reappointment of non-executive directors to the PIC, the Public Investment Corporation, for a period of 3 years. That is Mr. Xolani H. Mkhwana, Dr. Xolani H. Mkhwanazi. This is as Deputy Chairperson. Ms. Matugana Mukoka, Ms. Dudu Hlachwayo as a reappointment, Ms. Sibusisiwe N. Ngubane, also a reappointment, and Mr. Truman Goba, who is also a reappointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think at this point I'll invite Minister Mngwane Moshabane. Thank you.
Well, Honorable Minister, and colleagues, DCIS, we're here to share the news with South Africans that Mr. Stephen Malcolm McGowan, a South African national who was kidnapped in November 2011 in Timbuktu, Mali, by Al-Qaeda militants whilst on holiday, has been kept in captivity since then. The family, the government, and all the people of South Africa and the international community have since been campaigning for his release. We are happy to announce that finally these efforts have culminated in Mr. McGowan's release on the 29th July 2017. Would like to warmly welcome him back home and wish him good health, good fortune in his life as a free man. It is with sadness, though, that his dear mother, who I've met during this very difficult journey we've traveled with other members of the family, Beverly, passed on in May 2017 without seeing her son back home. The government once again extends its deepest condolences to Stephen and his family, as we did when this tragedy befell us. May her soul rest in eternal peace. The South African government would like to convey its deepest gratitude to all role players, such as ourselves, meaning South Africans, in campaigning for Stephen's release, the government of Mali and the people of Mali, the broader ECOWAS, the regional community of West Africa, the African Union, NGOs, and all individuals throughout the international community for their efforts that eventually secured McGowan's release. Finally, we call on all South Africans to continue to support Stephen whilst allowing him space and time he needs in the spirit of Ubuntu to adjust to his environment after years of incarceration. I thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you very much, Ministers. Colleagues, may I request that we confine our questions to Minister Maite and Minister Dlodlo, because immediately after they've left, there will be a fuller briefing with Minister Nxesi. So I will take questions for the two ministers. I think let me start with Karen at the back, and then I'll come with you. What was it? Yes, it's Apple, and then it's you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Karen Morn from ENCA. Minister, I don't know, are you able to give us any details of what precipitated Mr. McGowan's release? Was there any kind of hostage or ransom paid? Because we know that at one stage that was the demand. And just in terms of him psychologically at this point, how is he managing? Is there going to be any attempt to provide counselling to him? And do we have any time frames for when he is expected to return to South Africa? Thank you.
Thank you. Tsepo.
I'm Tsepo Ikanen from the SABC. Minister Dlodlo, has there been any kind of a clear-cut directives from Cabinet with regard to the two recommendations made by the ANC Lekgotla about free tertiary education and the impending truce within the mining sector with regard to the current fallout between Minister of Mineral Resources and the mining sector? And two important developments happening in Africa this weekend and next week, the elections in Rwanda and Kenya. Is there any message that South Africa wants to convey? Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last one is the lady.
Good afternoon. I'm Kalang Bata from Bloomberg News. Minister Zlodlo, did the Cabinet discuss the recommendations or even receive recommendations for the appointment of a new CEO at SAA?
Thank you. I think we'll allow those questions to be answered by the ministers. Thank you. Then we'll come to Cape Town before we release the two ministers.
Well, on the release of Stephen back home in South Africa, we just want to reiterate that South African government does not subscribe to payment of ransoms. So even in this regard, that's why I focused on the work we have been doing in the past 6 years. Campaigning, engaging with governments, and with the captors the way we know how. That's what we have been doing, and that's what we can confirm. Is he receiving the necessary support, the requisite for any South African citizen who had gone through this very, very, painful experience? The answer is yes. Is he home? As I had appealed that we allow him space to just settle, the answer is yes, but can we please allow him to resettle and regain his freedom? On elections that would be taking place starting tomorrow in Rwanda, from Tepo, and in the next coming few days in Kenya, all we can do is that we know that Africans now believe in peace, security, and development, subscribe through the AU statutes on principles of free, fair, and credible elections. And that's what we expect of our fellow members. The observers of the AU are on the ground doing what they do best during the time of elections. This is the route we have chosen, and which will reassure us that we will silence the gun in some few areas where we still find this stubbornness by 2020, in line with the aspirations, the 7 aspirations which are in line with Agenda 2063. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. You will remember that the Lekgotla started after the cabinet meeting, and it broke this morning, and we had another cabinet meeting to look at cabinet memoranda that were presented this morning. We had to break again because the Lekgotla was to resume at 10 o'clock because the premiers and representatives from SALGA had already arrived. We had given ourselves an hour to deal with the new memoranda that were being presented to Cabinet. So that process has not ended, so I am not at liberty to give you any more information about what was discussed this morning in Cabinet because that process has not ended. Now, on the other questions that you had raised on free tertiary education and also on the relationship between the Department of Mineral Resources and the private sector on the charter that has just been released, I am also not at liberty to discuss that today because the Lekgotla only ends today. So once that process has ended, I then will be able to give you information on that. But what I'm trying to do here is the normal that we usually have on Thursdays after a cabinet, just give you highlights of what was discussed, agreed upon, and approved by cabinet. But coming out of the Lekgotla, we will then have another press briefing so that we take you through the discussions and deliberations and approvals or whatever decisions that would have been taken there. So I hope you will be patient with me. That will be brought to your doorstep. Thank you.
Minister, I think at this point I'll only allow Cape Town and then we can release the ministers. Is there any question from Cape Town?
Yes, yes, Wendell.
Yes.
Thank you. To the International Relations Minister. Minister, just two things, please. I didn't get the date. When was McGowan released? When did he come to South Africa or arrive here? And if you could please just clarify, besides South Africa's great endeavor, was there any other foreign country, maybe the French or anybody else, I think Gift of the Givers were involved, besides your guys' negotiations, anybody else on your team, basically, maybe the French government or an NGO, something like that, please. And finally, if you can just give one line on his actual, what do you call it, his well-being, he's got all his limbs and stuff, you know, he's still walking or what, he looks very thin, or he doesn't remember where he is, or something like that, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, second question, and then there will be a third, and that will be the last.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Baba Londenza from the Sunday Times. Just on the draft green transport strategy that is to be published. Look, I obviously haven't read it, but could you just tell us how, I see South Africa has pledged a reduction target of 34% by 2020 and 42% by 2025. How does government actually envisage doing this? Is it what reduction of diesel emissions or diesel vehicles? I know the city of Cape Town at some point had an issue with diesel emissions specifically that caused all the smog here in the city of Cape Town. What exactly will you be targeting? There's also the informal taxi sector, which is also public transport. I mean, how do you plan on dealing with it? Thank you, please.
Last question, Linda.
Good morning, Minister. Linda Ensor from Business Day. Even though the country won't need to invest in new infrastructure for the Rugby World Cup, there surely must be other costs involved. And has there been an estimate like marketing or, security, and any estimate of what those costs are going to be? And
That's it from Cape Town.
Thank you very much. Before I hand over to the Minister, Linda, can you withhold that question and you will pose it to the Minister of Sports once their briefing takes place immediately after this? Thank you.
Sorry, Pumla.
Yes.
Sorry, it's Amo here in Joburg. I just was following up on my question on SAA, the appointment of the CEO.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think on the question of the SAA CEO, I did say that Cabinet had to break to allow a process that we had embarked upon of the Lekgotla to continue. Once that is done, the decisions that were supposed to have been taken on the memos that have been presented this morning will then resume.
Well, let me just reiterate once again that on the matter of our fellow South African, Mr. Stephen McGowan, he was released on the 29th July 2017. Does he still have all his limbs and physical conditions? Doctors are taking care of that. And I had appealed to our spirit of Ubuntu. Walking, yes. Does he still have his full limbs? Yes. But medical check, it's the normal routine that gets done when a person had gone through such a painful experience. And we had appealed, and I want to once again appeal to our South Africanness, Ubuntu, that we give him the dignity he deserves. We give him a warm welcome back home, particularly that he lands home with a mother that has passed on during his incarceration. Which other role players were there? I had mentioned in the statement that the South African government, in collaboration and in cooperation with the Malian government, with ECOWAS, with the African Union, with the international community, we abhor this kind of activities of any sort of Al-Qaeda, of Daesh, of ISIS, or any criminality acts that goes into kidnapping innocent citizens. Remember, he was just a tourist in Timbuktu. So we had an international effort on this matter, and we are happy that he is a free man. And I do not have to reiterate on the other things that I have already alluded to. Safe to say, can we please give him the support he deserves from all of us, as his loved ones and family also deserve space to just take a breather and welcome him home the way they know how. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister.
On the strategy on green emissions, there are a few things that government would be looking at, but also there is a role that needs to be played by communities, our citizens, but also including the private sector. One of which is ensuring that we create efficiencies and reliability of rail freight services, which means that the strategy should work at ensuring that the rail freight is more attractive than road transportation, which will help in the reduction of emissions. The second one is about promoting cleaner technologies. The other is about promoting a non-motorized transport system and to develop infrastructure that is associated with that. We're also looking at the promotion of green sustainable mobility and the uptake of cleaner and more efficient technologies. And also to note that the strategy in itself intends to reduce air pollution from the sector's combustion of liquid fossil fuels by creating an alternative to the fuel industry. So there will be a lot of work with regards to inviting, even from the public, innovative ways of assisting in reducing these emissions from the transport sector, but also ensuring that we in government, through our science and technology entities, including the CSIR, we work at ensuring that we find alternatives that I've spoken about in the non-motorized transport systems.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We've just come to the end of this portion. So if we could just break for just 2 minutes whilst we allow the ministers to depart and Minister Nxesi
and the
team.
As we break, Pumla, could we have the Deputy Minister for Sports joining us here, and also and the DG as well, but also to remind you that today we sit in a newly named media center that was named after our revolutionary icon in communications, Ronnie Mamwela. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Well, that's the post-cabinet Lekgotla media briefing there. And as you know, they're going to take a 2-minute break and they'll be back. Of course, you heard the story there. The Minister, Ayanda Dlodlu, currently briefing the media on the outcomes of the cabinet meeting in Victoria that took place on Tuesday. There's a lot to be discussed there. One of the big stories that come out of that, of course, Stephen McGowan has been released by Al-Qaeda. And, of course, South Africa, the approval of the preparation of the bid for hosting the World Cup 2023, the Rugby World Cup, that is. And, of course, some special permits, the reapplication, that process will continue. But we'll bring you more of that in a short while. Let's first now take a break and we'll be right back after that.
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle, straight into your mouth.
Get a 12-pack of Castle Lager 500ml cans for $104.99 from Tops at Spar.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the advice of our elders? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Yes, of course, the theme today, we're looking at political killings of councillors. And as you know, the focus, of course, is on the 90 councillors that have been killed in South Africa since 2014. Some in front of their family members, and many are fearing for their lives. That's why we're asking you this question in our poll today. Are political killings reaching crisis proportions or crisis point here in South Africa? 228 votes, and 90% of you on the continent as well as here in South Africa are saying yes, it is. Only 10% are saying no. Let's take a look at what you are tweeting us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. Well, in fact, we're not going to get there because Parliament is back. The Parliament briefing, the Cabinet Lekgotla that is taking place. Let's go back there.
Minister Gert Oosthuizen, and it's over to you, Minister.
Thank you. Thanks, Pumla. Minister Jojo and Deputy Minister Oosthuizen and the President and CEO of RAB and DG. There are two issues we just want to talk about. The first one is the establishment of the Ministerial Committee of Inquiry investigating the facts and the events that led to the death and the injury of the spectators at a soccer match between Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs on the 29th of July. And the second issue is to allow the media to ask questions in relation to the announcement which Minister Jojo has made about the Rugby World Cup. On the first issue, we have been given the permission by the President to establish this inquiry. You would know that before the kick-off of the Soweto derby between Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs on Saturday at FNB, that was the 29th of July, 2 soccer fans died and 2 soccer fans were critically injured. And at least a number, that time the count was 19, other fans, including a child, suffered minor injuries. And as a result of that unfortunate incident which happened, we are now finalizing the appointment of that ministerial committee. And it became so prudent that in terms of the law, we are able to do that. And we are also seeking guidance. We've made our submissions to the Minister of Justice because we need to appoint a retired judge and only 2 members in terms of the regulations. And those are the regulations in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, who would do that particular investigation. And even the terms of reference, we've finalized them, but subject to approval, those by the Department of Justice, and them giving us the name of the judge who would lead that. And once all that is done, we think that we'll be ready for the announcement either tomorrow or during the weekend, where we would announce that in full. But we just want to assure South Africans we are on top of the matter. We have consulted with the PSL because they are also doing the gathering of their own information and putting their own internal inquiry. However, as government, we will not just rely on that. Ours, we have indicated that the judge who's to be appointed must be able to deliver that report to the ministry, not later than not later than 1 month. We're just giving it a month from the date on which the committee will be officially established. So that is the first one. So details we might be able on the terms of reference to give you once justice has been able to clear that. The second one relates to the big news, very big positive news. Minister Jojo has already announced that Rugby South Africa, that is South African Rugby Union, has had to put its bid, but it needed support from the government. And this was a long process. Some of you might remember that Minister Mbalula, my predecessor, had taken measures to ban rugby and other three codes from competing or from bidding for international events until they had met certain targets. Rugby was included in that. Fortunately, at the time of the transition, a report by an eminent persons group who were independent experts was presented to us. We studied that report, which was able to show that SARU had been able to meet its own targets of transformation. But we put a condition that we will continue assessing them on an annual basis on further targets which must be put, because we believe that transformation is a process, it's not an event. On the basis of that, we had to lift the ban. Even them, they started very late to put the bid together. They did that, it needed our support, and that was approved by the government. And I won't repeat what Minister Jojo has announced. What government has seen this particular bid as an economic bid. An economic bid which has been based on the projections which have been done by professional companies to look at what is there for us. By the way, we must emphasize, we have learned from the 2010 World Cup various mistakes which were committed, where we ended up with a lot of money which had to be paid after the tournament. And we've put very stringent conditions, and all that must be followed in relation to this World Cup. But remember that it's just a bid. It's not yet in the pocket. A lot of work still has to be done. We are going to be putting an IMC interministerial committee, which will be working with SARU, putting the different stakeholders on board in terms of all the processes. And we hope that, therefore, we would be able to qualify And we have said one of our strengths as South Africa in this bid, we're bidding with two other countries, France and Ireland. And we believe that already as South Africa, we do have the infrastructure and the expertise, and of course a proven track record of running such complex events. We've had a number of international activities here. And you know, one of the requirements is 8 stadia who can be able to host such events. South Africa, we even have more than 10 of such stadia. And we think that on the infrastructure, we are spot on. And remember that that's where the biggest, what other people call the waste, but that's where the biggest spend was, which led even to collusion. And you know that Minister Patel, Economic Development, is dealing with those issues, where there was a lot of collusion in terms of the construction of the stadia. This time around, that big spend is not there. The stadia are ready, they've become an investment. And lastly, we believe that we have the millions of South Africans who are behind us to host the World Cup. And issues of the challenges of transformation, we have been able to put them very clearly to SARU that they must be taken on board. But transformation here, we're talking about development of rugby at the lower levels. In the national teams, you can see we do have black and white faces who are doing very well. So that's all I can say. The reason why we've brought the president and the CEO of SARU, if there are any technical questions, they are here to answer, in particular, the CEO and our DG of Sports and Recreation. Thank you. We're ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. Linda, you were the first one with your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Minister. Just to find out, there must be some budget required for security and a whole host of associated things besides infrastructure. Any estimate of the likely cost? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question from Cape Town before I come to Joe Pretoria?
Yes, there is.
Yes, please. Further to my colleague Linda's question, the cabinet statement does speak about an overall proposed package for the tournament. So if you could just flesh that out, please. What is the overall package? Why is it going to minimize the demands on the fiscus? And how is it going to stimulate economic activity, specifically regarding to job creation and empowerment? If you can just give me those figures, please. Thanks. Bye.
Thank
That's
you.
it from Cape Town.
I'm here in Pretoria. Is there any other question? Yes, Alexi.
Good morning, Minister. Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM. Minister, you called this an economic bid. You don't sound too excited about this bid for the 2023 Rugby World Cup if you call it just an economic bid. Is this enough to convince IRB that we are the nation that they want to host the Rugby World Cup at? Calling it an economic bid won't be doing it for me. Thank you.
Yes.
Minette from ANN7. Firstly, to the Minister, you talked about there should be consequences if SARU doesn't stick to the transformation plan. Between now and 2023, should they fail, what are those consequences, if you can share that with us? And to the CEO, there's talk in the statement about there will be programs in disadvantaged communities. How different will these be to what we already see, where it's just not a case of a 3-day rugby clinic? Are we talking about centers, specific academies? Are we talking about coaches within that area coming in? How different are these programs compared to the programs that are currently running right now?
Thank you. That's all, ministers. Those are the questions.
I will allow Minister Jojo, followed by the DG and Yuri. I'll come at the end.
Can I just answer the question that you had asked? I'm sorry, I did not get your name. When I announced this, I specifically said that Cabinet has approved South Africa to submit its bid to host the 2023 Rugby World Cup. And then I said this once again affords South Africa an opportunity to showcase the country to the international community. I then went on to speak about how sports is seen as a catalyst for social cohesion. So latching onto one part of a whole statement that has been made takes away the essence of what it is that we're talking about. So the issue is economic, but it is not only economic. It deals with a whole host of things that you would want to see happening as we go through this process of bidding, right up until the day that we fold and give a report on what has happened and how good the holding of these tournaments would have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The question about cost of this. We are requesting Cabinet to underwrite a tournament hosting fee of 2.8 billion rands, or 160 million British pounds. In today's current exchange will be about 2.8 billion rands. This amount is for us to buy essentially the rights to host the tournament from World Rugby. And essentially, in previous World Cups, we have also requested Cabinet to also underwrite the operational budget as well as the capital expenditure budget. With the Minister already having indicated the availability of stadia, and if you consider that they were finished just before 2010, in 2009 early, many of them. I'm sorry, I have flu, so I hope. But essentially the key issue would be that the stadiums will still be quite new from a stadium point of view by 2023. And they need to be utilized. They can't just be white elephants. And mega events mean that we're able to utilize the stadia for that purpose. And the reason we say it will not put additional demands on the fiscus is primarily because with this bid, we are confident that should we get the rights, we would be able to make a lot of money out of it for rugby and for smaller sporting codes as well, and for government itself. And to that extent, we aren't asking the National Fiscus or Cabinet to underwrite the operational budget, because that we would raise with SARU via a private bank to finance that, and we would be able to pay it back and still manage to make money out of it. We say this is an economic bid primarily because we believe that with the previous bids we allowed, particularly with the 2010 Soccer World Cup, our intention was, one, to unite the nation and to have a social cohesion program as a main, but importantly we wanted to leave a lasting legacy. And I think this is what is often forgotten, that we pitched that World Cup as a World Cup to build legacy, and that legacy is the stadia and the infrastructure you see, and that infrastructure today is serving us well to be able to make money out of the tournaments that we now host, because we now have the infrastructure in place. On the question of the consequences if transformation targets are not met, I think the Minister has before him a number of instruments listed in the National Sport and Recreation Act, which he may pursue should the targets not be met. One of them is the one of the ban on bidding and hosting. That's the first one. But the second one is on the funding that we provide to the National Sports Federations such as SARU. We understand that perhaps in the case of SARU, that's not so important, because what we give them constitute about 1.3% of their annual budget. So it's really neither here nor there. But essentially, there are other things they require from us. One of them is what we call the political premium. For instance, on the support, whether the sponsors should endorse their activities and so on. We no longer give that cheaply and quite freely. And that may be one of the biggest things and instruments we have. But also importantly, the other important instrument in our arsenal is the whole issue of recognition. If needs be, we may withdraw recognition of SARU as a recognized sport board, which then essentially means that their operations in the sporting sector would become quite suspect and cagey. The last thing we have is the national colors. If there is non-compliance, we may withdraw the colors to the national teams, and which means essentially the teams may be fielded by SARU, but they will not be South African teams. They would be perhaps a SARU team, but it will not be a South Africa. They only become South Africa once the minister allocates those colors and they then play as South Africa on behalf of the country as such. So those are the consequences and the instruments we have at our disposal.
Pumla, could I just get some clarity quickly?
Linda, can we finish responding and then we'll come back if you still need clarity?
Thank you very much. Thank you, DG. Thank you, the ministers. In terms of probably the last answer, we are in the fortunate position that we don't really need a sword over our heads in terms of transformation. We as an organization believe in transformation. We have set our own targets, and we are less stressed about those targets and on the consequences of not reaching those targets in the years to come. More importantly, towards the positive news of today and the direction we're taking, we believe as a country we have a very competitive bid, and we believe we've got a technically superior bid than everybody else. We base that on basically 4 tiers. First and foremost, we will be able to host probably one of the best World Cups ever because we have the legacy of the stadiums that was built in 2010. In terms of our budget and our budget approvals for the next couple of years, we do have contingency within those budgets to upgrade those stadiums and to make sure that they kept up to standard in terms of their pitches. In actual fact, we will take out all of the pitches and put new ones in for the Rugby World Cup, and that is already in the budget. In terms of the questions around that technical bid for the stadium, we've got all of the other infrastructure in terms of hotels. And in actual fact, we believe in terms of our price parity compared to Europe, that we can provide the same hotels at a third of the price at 3 times the size of the hotels of Europe. And any of you that have traveled to Europe will understand what I'm saying. So we can host any World Cup at a third of the price that the rest of the world can. So from an economic point of view, that is a pretty easy sell to World Rugby. And then we're a sports-mad country, and I think South Africa will afford this tournament the same it did for the 2010, and will be rugby focused for that period of time. The sales of tickets are at exactly the same price in real terms that it would be in 2015, which makes it affordable for both South Africans and all of the rest of the world to be able to come within the range of that ticketing. And then we have probably what nobody else has. We are uniquely South African. In no other country in the world will you be able to swim on the beach in the one moment, watch a rugby game the next day, then go and watch animals somewhere, enjoy the uniqueness of the Eastern Cape or any other of the cultural experiences of South Africa. So on those 4 pillars, we've got a really unique bid, and I think we're competitive in what we do. When we talk about the security and the security cost, obviously within our budget, there's a pretty big amount allocated towards security to the tune of 120 million. But like for any other normal event, we are reliant on our local municipalities, we are reliant on our local police force and other forces to assist us on the day. But that is nothing new. It's going to happen Saturday when the Lions play the final against the Crusaders. It's happening every Saturday when any PSL match is taking place. So we don't expect that should be a hurdle in terms of where we're going. In terms of the broader budget of the event, it is a 415 million pounds event. That's a pretty hefty number, of which the government has underwritten a fair amount. For the rest, that will come out of your sponsorship money, your broadcasting money, your ticketing money, and your merchandising. So in that broader spectrum, we're very confident that we will be able to deliver that budget and also make a profit. And in terms of that profit, we have a deal with both government and then also with SASCOC and our smaller entities that the profit will be shared in terms of South African rugby, the government to relieve some of the funding that they've given us, and the rest of the funding will be made up in terms of direct taxes and the broader economic impact of the event to South Africa. And then obviously to the smaller unions that federations in the country that don't always have the ability to raise funds for their events, there will be an allocation to them. And then importantly, in terms of our bid, every bid that goes to World Rugby has to have a legacy program, and we are not there to reinvent the wheel. We're currently endorsing some pretty big programs that are based on sustainability and not what we refer to as a clinic, and we refer to a clinic as a hot dog and Coke show, where people get pulled together for a day, given a T-shirt, a hot dog and a Coke, and you think you've done development on any phase. We don't operate in that way. We do that in a sustainable way through a program which is called Get Into Rugby, and that program is only tested on one base, whether it's still there in 12 months and whether it's increased in 12 months. And we will endorse that and some other more physical projects and then obviously legacy projects in terms of stadia and bigger support. So overall, given the gracious support of government, we believe technically we have as strong a bid as France or Ireland.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Yeah,